Chapter 642. To the gods, it was insignificant and could only be used as a bonus, but to the ninja master, it was too precious. The only drawback was that it would contaminate the soul. After all, it was another person's lifespan. The consequences of soul contamination ranged from mental disorder to personality replacement. Thea really couldn't let ordinary people use it, but the ninja master who had long been contaminated by demons didn't have this concern. This hourglass contains a person's lifespan of 70 years. Your original demon physique will increase the burden on your lifespan, but it's still possible to extend your lifespan by 30 to 40 years. Thea noticed a flash of light in the ninja master's eyes and knew that he was tempted. Now there are two options in front of you, waiting for you to choose. Do you want to solve the problem of the Assassin League while everyone is here today, or take a step back to extend your lifespan? In fact, there was no need to guess to know the old man's real thoughts. The longer one lived, the more afraid of death, especially the ninja master. The truth was as Thea expected. He quickly made up his mind to get the lifespan first. The Assassin League could be put aside for 2 years. Anyway, the purpose of the Assassin League was to extend his lifespan, so he couldn't put the cart before the horse. Thea threw the hourglass to him. How do I use this thing? The old man looked at it for a long time. It didn't look like something to eat. You know the worship ceremony of the Greek gods, right? Thanatos needs your belief. As long as you believe in him and worship him from time to time, the quicksand will slowly enter your body and extend your lifespan. The ninja master was very satisfied. This method wasn't difficult. Although it was a bit strange for a Central Asian to believe in a Greek god, who cared about this in a life-and-death situation? The old man left the bat cave gracefully. A storm that was neither too big nor too small was finally resolved. Thea finally had time to introduce Cassandra to Batman. Whether it was for Siva or Thea, he couldn't refuse. Batman happily took over the black-haired Loli's future teaching job. Thea sent the square-faced Nisha back to Star City, and the siblings continued to follow Moira around the country. Under the strict defense of several forces, Moira's final push ended perfectly. Now it was time to see the final vote. That morning, after Quinn's family had breakfast, the three of them went to the nearest polling place together. When the reporters who had been waiting for a long time saw the family of 3 get out of the car, they rushed towards them like crazy. Ms. Quinn, how confident are you that you will be selected? Dr. Quinn, will you vote for your mother? Mr. Quinn, is there anything you want to tell the media about your relationship with Lance and her sister? In order to appear more approachable, a large number of Moira's security personnel were dismissed by her. Today, she was voting as an ordinary citizen. The eldest miss also kept a low profile and did not bring anyone with her. However, the wall of human flesh that she used to have was no longer there. She could not send a mental attack into the crowd, so she was a little speechless as she was surrounded by a tide of reporters. As a man, Oliver could only rely on himself to separate the crowd and let the 2 women enter the voting booth. The tabloid reporters at the entrance could be ignored, but the large media inside the polling station had to be dealt with carefully. The 3 of them got their votes. This was not the time to be modest. The other candidate ignored them and the 3 of them chose Moira. They each filled in the form and showed it to the media. Only then did the procedure was completed. The integrity of the media in the polling station was quite high. They did not pay attention to the gossip, but focused on Moira's governance after that. Moira did not hold back and described the benefits of electing her as the president. In short, if they did not elect her, they would suffer a big loss. When the other candidate was mentioned, she did not hold back and ridiculed the other party. She almost shouted at the camera that the other party was a fool. This was very interesting. At the beginning of the election, when the 2 candidates mentioned each other, they were all polite words, such as respectable opponents, extraordinary politicians, and so on. However, when Moira began to take the lead, everything changed. Both sides adjusted their strategies almost at the same time, which was to belittle the other party and elevate themselves. The TV debate still needed to maintain some dignity. Now that the dust had settled, there was no need to hold back. Moira ridiculed the other party's governance strategy and fashion sense. It turned out that the other party did not show any mercy. When the family of 3 returned to the old house, they turned on the TV and saw that the other party was also scolding their own clothing. Since Moira's main theme was the superhero card, the other candidate went all out. In his opinion, the superhero could not do anything to him. He completely disregarded life and death. He ridiculed several superheroes, focusing on how Superman's blue tights and red cloak did not match and how terrible the color combination was. Thea could only say sorry to Superman for being caught in the crossfire. Presumably, the good-tempered Superman would not mind. The whole day of voting was noisy. All kinds of rumors were flying and the whole country was jubilant as if it was a festival. The family of 3 did not go anywhere, but waited silently at home for the final results. Many of the aides kept sending back all kinds of news. The results of the vote count came out very quickly. Moira won a large number of votes and directly announced the victory of the election in front of the media surrounded by people. To officially enter the White House, they had to wait until January 20th of the next year. During the inauguration ceremony, they had to hold the Bible and take the oath of office to complete the whole process. There was still more than a month to 2 months before that. Thea used this time to personally arrange her mother's security. The teleportation gem was still the most important thing. Although Moira's physical fitness was much better than an ordinary old lady, she still could not withstand the shooting of a large-caliber weapon. Although she had learned some fighting skills like taekwondo, the results were not worth mentioning. Thea found a few of Death Knell's subordinates who did not look so fierce and stuffed them into the security team. The Sky's Eye Association would also provide some protection. With this double insurance, she felt at ease. Moira flipped through the calendar every day, waiting to reach the peak of her life. Now, the president in the White House, who was already a little nervous, was also flipping through the calendar. Anyone who wanted to come to this place could come, he did not want to stay a day longer. Thea took time out to meet Poseidon again. Amidst the ripples, she entered Poseidon's kingdom. A few giants who had fought side by side before led her into Poseidon's bedroom. He was waiting outside the door. After dismissing the irrelevant people, the 2 gods spoke a few words. Seeing that he was not happy, Thea immediately went to the main topic today. I can give you this staff, but Poseidon did not mind such a straightforward request. If there was a need, it would be easy. If there was no need, it would be easy. A ton of meteoric iron. What do you think? Poseidon thought that he made a very high offer. Thea almost spat in his face. Meteoric iron? Wasn't that the remnants of meteorites that entered the atmosphere? I have as much of it as I want. If you want it, I can even give you a few planet. Thinking of the few pieces of precious meteoric iron in Hade's treasury, she was speechless. She did not touch any of those broken stones. They were the only things left in Hade's treasury. She shook her head, indicating that she did not want it. The essence of water. No. The horn of harvest. Our family is a high-tech business group. We don't farm, thank you. Poseidon gave several suggestions, some of which were inappropriate, some of which were completely useless. Modern society was rich in resources. What was the use of giving her a horn of harvest? How about this, Your Majesty, open your treasury and let me choose any treasure. How about that? Thea finally revealed her fox tail. Chapter 643. Poseidon shook his head and refused. If you randomly picked and took the best one, I would suffer a huge loss. Thea realized his concern and sighed in her heart. There were too few opportunities to pick up scraps, and the opportunity to snatch by force was even more rare. She had to play her part this time. She summoned another trading slate and wrote clearly that the god of death staff would be exchanged for a treasure from Poseidon's treasury. The difference would be made up by her side. Oh, so you are the goddess of wealth. I didn't know. Poseidon was able to see through Thea's abilities with just one move. The Poseidon had always thought that Thea was a god in battle. You can't take my personal artifact. He made a request. Thea nodded and added it to the slate. Okay, come with me. Poseidon thought about it. The god of death staff was very important to him, and this deal was worth it. He led her to his treasury. She had already seen the treasury of two gods, and had to admit that the Poseidon's treasury was very different from the other two. Zeus's treasury was full of fine items, and he didn't care for the ordinary ones. Hades, on the other hand, had a big pot of everything. There were so many things that the two thieves, Sia and Diana, were so busy that they hadn't even finished sorting them out yet. Poseidon's treasury was just like him, willful and unrestrained. He didn't care for the ordinary ones, and he didn't care for those that didn't suit him. In short, he was very willful. His treasures were all related to his priesthood. Water treasures were the most, and fire and light treasures were the least. Most of his treasures advocated strength, and they made people feel peaceful. It was a very extreme and willful collection style. Thea couldn't look carefully because time was limited. She directly lit up the most valuable item in the room. She looked around and found that treasures like the thread of fate were really rare. Even the Emperor of the Underworld and the Poseidon didn't have such a level of collection. After turning around for a while, she finally found something good. A ball of blue flame was peacefully resting in the corner. Although this flame was not the most valuable thing in the room, it was relatively suitable for her. To be honest, Poseidon's treasure trove was a little disappointing. This guy was neither as comprehensive as Hades, nor as good as Zeus's. No wonder he had been second place for so many years. There were a few treasures that were good, but Thea had no use for them. However, this flame was different. Not only could it be added to the silver flame, but it was also an extremely valuable material for Diana to forge. After stretching his neck and searching for a long time, he finally confirmed that this was the flame. The flame collected by Amphitrite? Poseidon looked at the treasure that Amphitrite was holding and reminisced about the past. Oh! Thea didn't expect that this ball of flame was made by a famous person. If she remembered correctly, this Amphitrite was the wife of the Sea Emperor. Her style of doing things was similar to his elder brother, Hades. His wife was also snatched. This sea goddess had probably been sleeping in the god's kingdom for a long time now, and Thea had never seen her in person. The sadness of the Sea Emperor lasted at most half a second. Seeing that Thea didn't take his favorite treasures, the two happily completed the trade. The value of the god of death staff was relatively low. After all, it was only made by the demigod god of death. However, it was very useful to the Sea Emperor now, so it was an equivalent exchange. Holding the golden god of death staff in his hand, Poseidon secretly sighed and thought about his words. Goddess of wealth, where did you get this staff? If Thea still didn't know that he was related to the god of death, then she was too stupid. She described in detail the place where she got the staff that day, but she didn't mention the Sea King Arthur and the others. Poseidon didn't hear the answer he wanted. God of death. Is that what people call him now? What's his relationship with His Majesty? Sia asked casually as she was curious. Poseidon thought for a while and decided to tell the truth. This was mainly because he saw that Thea's strength was outstanding, and she didn't have a close relationship with the Greek gods. Atlanta used to be my chosen, but he stole part of my power when I was sleeping. That bastard. Poseidon suppressed his anger and said in a cold tone. Oh. It suddenly dawned on Thea that everything made sense now. Atlanta was naturally the god of death. Just like how Thea was the moon goddess's chosen, he was of a higher rank and obtained the position of the Sea Emperor's chosen. This explained how he could survive until today. Ordinary Atlanteans had a longer lifespan than people on the surface, but it was impossible for them to live for more than 10,000 years. The god of death was the chosen of the Sea Emperor, and his lifespan was long enough. Listening to Poseidon, he even stole part of Poseidon's origin. This could be called powerful. You ruled the 7 seas, didn't you find him? He shouldn't be a god, right? Thea was a little puzzled. The description in the comic was not clear enough, so she didn't know the true strength of the god of death. That thief is definitely not a god, but he is not in the sea. I am very sure of that. Looking at Poseidon's indignant expression, Thea was a little tempted. Of course, she was not indignant to seek justice for Poseidon, but she wanted to remove the god of death in advance. This guy used to be the first king of Atlantis, a great hero who had won many battles. Unfortunately, he was betrayed by his family. Determined to take revenge, he sank the continent of Atlantis. The more serious problem was that this guy had gone mad. It was hard to say whether he would jump out and cause trouble. Thea, who had been pushed to the edge by fate, had to get rid of him. Moreover, she wanted to see how the god of death stole the Sea Emperor's origin. After ascending to godhood, the increase in strength began to slow down. According to Thea's estimation, she was now a beginner divine power, while Darkseid and the Father must be high-level divine powers. She was 2 levels below the 2 big bosses, maybe even more. At his current level, it was extremely difficult to take another step forward. Shozon's gift bag was still waiting for her to collect, but it was not advisable to directly absorb divine power like a demigod. The divine power was completely incompatible, and even if she absorbed it forcefully, it would dissipate quickly. When she was a mortal, she only pursued quantity. When the quantity reached a certain level, it would lead to a qualitative change. Now that the qualitative change had been completed, it was not suitable to just accumulate quantity. To put it more broadly, the divine power of different gods could be mixed in the mortal stage, but when one reached the divine stage, the difference was huge. The divine power of wealth was completely incompatible with the divine power of earth and lightning. This problem was still troubling Thea. If she could see how the god of death intercepted the Sea Emperor's origin, perhaps it would be more helpful for her to absorb Shozon's divine power in the future. She immediately chatted with Poseidon for a while, saying that she had no clues, but if she saw the god of death, she would inform him. Only then did she leave Poseidon's kingdom. Chapter 644. She had to find the god of death no matter what. She wanted to see if the method he used to steal Poseidon's origin was useful. Poseidon's insistence on getting the staff back was probably to track him down. Thea returned to the metropolis and began to arrange her subordinates to search for the god of death. She remembered that this guy had been hiding in the ice mountains for thousands of years, but now even Poseidon could not find him. He must not be that simple. She guessed that the chances of the god of death hiding in a small plain were very high. This was also the main reason why Poseidon could not find him. After winning the election, Moira's task became even busier. Every day, there was an endless stream of people coming to visit the Quinn family's old house in Star City. Some recommended themselves for jobs, some talked about their scientific achievements in hopes of getting government support, and some talked about the international situation. There were all kinds of people who wanted to break down the door of the Quinn family's old house. Those who wanted to be officials were easy to deal with, but Moira could not deal with the people from the scientific community. She could only rely on her daughter to deal with them. To be honest, Thea was indeed knowledgeable. She had led mankind in climbing the tree of technology. She had dabbled in almost all the fields of modern applied science. It was just that she was not proficient in them, but after 2 days of dealing with them, she could not handle it. She had to use the fat old man in the firestorm as a scapegoat. He was a leading figure in nuclear physics and looked like a white-haired old scholar. He could handle most of the problems. All kinds of people dealt with them like a merry-go-round. After a month, it was Christmas Eve. There was no need to hold such a high-profile party this Christmas. Moira only prepared a small family gathering. Except for the grand banquet where celebrities gathered last year, this year's small gathering could be said to be Diana's first serious entry into Quinn's family circle. Today, the Valkyrie was dressed very modestly. Although she was not afraid of the cold in December, she still wore a beige wool coat, a knee-length skirt and boots. "Aunt Moira, Merry Christmas." Diana bowed politely and gave a small gift. "Diana, long time no see. Merry Christmas." Moira gave her a gentle hug to show her welcome. Olivier also brought Shadow to this family gathering. Diana was not familiar with them, but they knew each other. They could get together and chat. Moira left the young people chatting and went to entertain a few of her peers. There were still many relatives in the Quinn family. Although Robert Sr. had passed away 8 years ago, his siblings were still alive. Moira wasn't born out of a crack in a rock. She also had her own relatives. Now that she was about to move into the White House, many relatives came to support her. Even if it was a family gathering, there were still more than 30 people. The older generation gathered together to chat, while the younger generation naturally gathered around Thea and the others. The young mistress's beauty was simply unparalleled in the world. However, the few relatives did not dare to have any ideas about her. The law here was that cousins were allowed to. But a billionaire, an academic giant, and a superhero title made most people flinch. They were just ordinary people and did not want to be captured by a group of aliens while walking on the street. A few of the young people were unconsciously attracted by Diana's heroic spirit and tried to show off their excellent side. The young mistress would not let their imagination run wild. Without a word, she pulled Diana's head over and kissed her lips. Diana was a little stunned at first, but soon understood and responded enthusiastically. The two of them showcased their affection on the spot, causing the relatives to sigh. Why would such a beautiful woman have such a relationship? What a waste. Although Thea's response was a little intense, they understood the whole story. They were wondering why a beauty like Diana would appear at the Quinn family's banquet. The truth made the young people feel miserable. Although there was a small episode, the Christmas banquet was very warm. The young people decorated the Christmas tree and hung the mistletoe. The young mistress, who was usually lazy, did not use magic today. She rolled up her sleeves and decorated with the others. The elders brought all kinds of food, including turkey, pudding, chocolate, and red wine for everyone to taste. From time to time, people dressed in Christmas robes and beard, dressed up as Santa Claus, came to congratulate the family. Moira gave everyone a gift. She did not put on airs, just like an ordinary housewife. There was a knock on the door. She could only open the door again. "Hey, Moira, Merry Christmas." A middle-aged man with an elegant appearance greeted her with a smile. Moira's expression changed slightly. She could not help but want to look into the house from the corner of her eyes, but she forced herself to hold back. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Merlin." Feeling the abnormality outside the door, Thea inadvertently took a look. She almost spat out the pudding in her mouth. Old Ma was here. Not only did he come alone, but he also brought his son, Tommy, and daughter-in-law, Laurel. It was not a big deal for the two families to celebrate Christmas together, but he even brought Shangju's wife. It was already ridiculous for a goddess like Diana to celebrate Christmas, but now the youngest sister of the goddess of the lake also came to celebrate Christmas. Would that wooden god be able to withstand it? While Thea was stunned, Old Ma had already entered Quinn's old house with his girlfriend and son. This guy was indeed here for Christmas. Seeing that Malcolm and his family were obviously not here to cause trouble, Moira also let down her guard. She chatted with Shangju, half to test the situation and half to build a relationship. Today, Shangju's wife had obviously made some preparations. She put away her ethereal temperament, just like when Thea first met her 100 years ago. She was graceful and elegant, and her speech was extraordinary. Even in front of Moira, who was already the leader of a country, she was not inferior. "Who is that woman?" Tommy pulled Laurel to the side of the young people. Oliver asked in a low voice. He was naturally referring to Shangju's wife. "Yes. She's my dad's new girlfriend." Tommy was a little embarrassed. His dad had disappeared for several years. Now that he jumped out, it was unexpected. Oliver looked at her seriously. "This woman seems to be very powerful. She's not an enemy, is she?" After that, he looked at his sister and Diana. In Oliver's view of the world, it was always right to ask his sister about these strange things and people. When Thea was hesitating whether to say it or not, Diana directly sold her out. "Thea knows best. They have some history." Milady looked back at her as if she was a traitor. She quietly set up a small enchantment and explained to them, "She's Shangju's wife, the youngest sister of the goddess of the lake in Celtic mythology. As for my history with her, it's because my sword is the sword of the lake." This is what Diana is referring to. The Valkyrie shrank her neck. She forgot that Thea's Merlin bloodline could not be exposed. Fortunately, Milady covered it up. Chapter 645. The story of the sword in the lake, King Arthur and the goddess of the lake, was known to everyone here. Even Shodo had heard of it before. Their mouths were wide open as they tried to digest the news. Oliver and Shodo didn't care about it, so they just treated it as a story. Tommy and Laurel, on the other hand, had a hard time. Fortunately, they were experienced and knowledgeable. Diana was a living example, so they weren't too surprised. They were just scratching their heads about how to deal with their relationship in the future. With 4 more people, the Christmas party went on as usual. Everything was peaceful and no accidents happened. The young people agreed to go out for a walk. Malcolm and Madame Shangju also got up and left. Old Ma, Oliver, and Tommy walked in front. The women were a step behind. Madame Shangju looked at Thea carefully for a while and sighed. "Have you come this far?" How far had she come? Laurel and Shodo were full of questions, but they wisely didn't ask. "I was lucky, but the road ahead is getting harder and harder." Thea's relationship with Shangju had always been neutral. In the past, they were simply seniors and juniors. Now, they had become seniors and juniors. Madame Shangju wasn't angry that she was surpassed by her juniors. Her expression was still indifferent. "Fate has shown me that the path you're on is completely correct. Don't be afraid, don't hesitate. Follow your heart and persevere." The group walked to a crossroad. Malcolm and Shangju parted ways with them. Thea didn't say a word to old Ma. They didn't even look at each other, but they understood each other's thoughts. Oliver, Tommy, and Laurel weren't devout believers. Shodo was from an indescribable country. Thea and Diana were even worse. It was torture for them to go to church. They decided that the night was long and they couldn't sleep. They might as well go and fight criminals for fun. Returning to her old base, Thea had a lot of feelings. Felicity and Ray Palmer were now together. They had a good chance of becoming a couple. She had already left this place and was heading for a wider world. Perhaps Star City's public security was too good, or perhaps the criminals had a premonition that there would be a disaster tonight. The 6 of them guarded the communication channel for a long time, but none of them called the police. "Let's have a contest," suggested Oliver. Everyone had nothing better to do, so they all agreed. After agreeing with everyone's opinions, they decided to compete in archery. Green Arrow Girl, and Black Arrow all relied on their bows to survive, not to mention Thea. Diana also knew how to shoot arrows. Back then, Antiope had taught her for a long time, but she preferred close combat and did not usually use a bow. It was worth mentioning that Laurel had also learned archery. The Green Arrow Party was now a veritable shooting club. There wasn't a single member who couldn't shoot. Everyone displayed their skills. Thea and Diana also suppressed themselves to the level of an ordinary person. They only competed with their archery skills, which instantly highlighted Oliver's strength. Even if Thea and Diana used all their archery skills, they still couldn't surpass him. This was Oliver's talent. They played around until 3 o'clock, and then went home. Diana officially moved into Quinn's old house. The election was over, and this kind of private life could not shake Moira's position at all. It could even help her share the political pressure, so she was very calm. "Is this your adoptive father?" The 2 girls took a shower and changed into their pajamas, lying on the bed. Thea showed Diana her childhood photos. While looking through the photos, Diana pointed to one of the photos and asked. Thea was only 6 or 7 years old in the photo, riding on the neck of a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man was Robert Quinn, who died in the shipwreck of the Gold Quinn. That was where everything began. Thea looked at the photo and was also immersed in her memories. It was in Hawaii. At that time, he was fishing. "I pestered my father and rode on his neck. Haven't you thought about resurrecting him?" Diana hesitated for a while, but still asked the question that had been on her mind for a long time. Thea was silent. Recently, she never got tired of giving others choices every day. Only when the choice fell on her did she realize the dilemma. Although resurrection methods were rare, it was not impossible. Whether it was Hera or the Heavenly Father, they both had some. As long as she made a deal, they would give it to her. But what about after the resurrection? The Gold Quinn was sunk by Malcolm. Old Malcolm really treated her well. What should she do then? Watch her biological father and adoptive father fight, and the white knife enters and the red knife comes out? Besides, Moira's attitude and Oliver's thoughts also needed to be considered. They all knew what she was capable of now, But no one mentioned resurrecting Robert Quinn. It was more of a dilemma. Thea silently stroked Robert Quinn's photo. The mistake of her father's generation had been made. What should she do? In order to stop all this from happening, should she go back to the past and cause a big incident like Thea's version of the flashpoint? That would be interesting. If Robert Quinn knew that he had caused a multiverse-level disaster, he would not be willing. He would rather die with a smile. Thea was sure of that. Diana kissed her on the forehead, and Sia lay down in her arms. The two of them didn't have any sparring, but just hugged each other quietly until dawn. Thea did not make up her mind in the end. Just like Batman chose to indulge the Ninja Master, she chose to be an ostrich and drag on to maintain the status quo. Another month passed quickly, and it was finally the day of the swearing-in. Early in the morning of January 20th, the family of three was dragged to the church for a worship ceremony. Moira was serious and solemn, while Oliver and Thea were a little more casual. At least this wooden god was not worthy of the goddess of wealth. After that, the former president accompanied the current president to Capitol Hill. Thea certainly could not hold the holy sword on such a day. She wore a quilt. She wore a blue dress, carried a handbag, and wore a pair of 6-centimeter high heels. She wore a few simple accessories, and looked very low-key and simple. In truth, the dress was personally woven by Aramani using divine threads. The high heels were made of dragon leather, and the heels were made of polished dragon teeth. The accessories were also part of Hades's collection. Any one of them was a quasi-divine artifact. She had now reached the point where she could casually waste precious materials without blushing. Dr. Quinn is getting more and more beautiful. The former president had never seen Oliver, but he knew Thea. Of course, in the past, Thea had never brought him any good news, so for a long time, it was a nightmare for the young lady to appear in the president's dreams. Today, the former president swept away his decadence, and his face was glowing. He walked with the wind as if there were springs in his shoes. Compared to Moira's serious face and his cheerful appearance, those who did not know the inside story would think that Moira was the former president and he was the current president. Chapter 646. Looking at the former president's energetic appearance, he did not look like he was going to Arkham for treatment as advertised by the media. The young lady awkwardly exchanged a few words with this old acquaintance before the other party let her go and stood side by side with Moira. "Ms. Moira Quinn, are you willing to serve as the President of the United States?" When everything was set up, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court asked loudly. Moira put her hand on the Bible in front of her. Strengthened twice by her daughter, her voice was loud and did not sound like a middle-aged woman at all. "I solemnly swear that I will faithfully carry out the duties of the President of the United States and do my best to abide by, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States." After the routine procedure, there was a warm applause. Thea also happily clapped twice. After that, the former president was sent off and the new president began his first policy speech. In fact, it was all routine and cliché. Before the election, Moira had repeated the same words hundreds of times, but she still had to go through the process. She also talked about eliminating poverty, protecting the rights of women and children, increasing employment, vigorously developing the economy, and so on. The elites in the audience had to pretend that it was the first time they heard it. They all pretended to be very moved and responded with warm applause. The vice president had been sworn in front of the president. He was also Thea's old acquaintance, the former Minister of Defense, General Swanwick. This black general had officially retired from politics and was now Moira's deputy. After several internal games, the position of Minister of Defense was handed over to Clark's father-in-law, General Ryan. They just had to wait for Moira to take office and go through the nomination process. Analysts agreed that the combination of a president with a huge financial group background and a vice president with a military background would be more executive and inclusive than the previous government. After the speech, it was time for the inauguration luncheon. Many guests had been standing under the sun for half a day. Some of the older guests were so tired that they were about to collapse. They took the opportunity to rest for a while and eat a simple meal. Most of the guests were greeting each other. After all, the men were still fine, but many of the female guests were dressed so tightly that they couldn't even sit properly. What a joke. The young lady did not care. Even if she ate a dragon, her stomach would not have any abnormalities. However, she could not give up on her manners. She could not eat a drumstick. She also had to pretend to be a lady and wait with Oliver on the side. The banquet proceeded very quickly. Formalism was everywhere, and it was the same here. The luncheon almost ended right on time. A group of people walked out in an orderly manner. According to the procedure, it was the presidential inauguration parade. The motorcade circled along Pennsylvania Avenue, and finally, the president went up to the viewing platform of the White House to watch. The parade was made up of the honor guards of the three armed forces, civic groups, and various floats. Finally, there was an inaugural ball, and the event finally came to an end. Ayo. I'm so tired. The young lady felt that today was even more tiring than the battle with the eldest son. She threw herself onto the big bed in the White House, exhausted. For the next 8 years, she would have a bedroom here if nothing unexpected happened. This was the only reward she had gained after several months of hard work. She was so tired that Oliver and Moira were not much better off than her. The whole family had gone to bed early. Early the next morning, Thea was awakened by the noise. Just as she was about to cast a chain lightning to kill the flies, she finally realized that she was in the White House. She awkwardly put away her magic and observed the people outside. She changed into casual clothes and walked out leisurely. The breakfast in the White House was very simple. The waiter brought her a small plate, a few slices of bread, a few pieces of bacon, a palm-sized pancake, and a glass of milk. This was the breakfast for the day. Thea did not care whether she ate it or not. She just thought it was funny. Those guys who protested every day about the luxurious life in the White House should really come and see. This breakfast was at most $10. According to this standard, how much money could they spend in 8 years? She quickly finished her breakfast. On the first day of the new president's term, there was a routine press conference. Thea dressed herself as quickly as possible and stood in front of the White House lawn. She narrowed her eyes and listened to the reporters asking all kinds of strange questions. Originally, she thought that this matter had nothing to do with her. She was thinking about the god of death. Suddenly, a reporter mentioned her name and quickly pulled her attention back to reality. Dr. Quinn, is it comfortable to live in the White House? Well, those with the title of PhD must be addressed as Dr. in public. The Missy had always praised herself for her persistence in the past. Otherwise, Miss Quinn would sound very low and inferior. For 8 generations of the Quinn family, she was the only one who had a PhD, so it was self-evident who the other party was asking. Of course, the Missy would not say that this was the smallest place she had ever lived. The White House was 73,000 square meters. It was not small, but compared to the properties under her name, it could only be said to be SOSO. She cheekily praised the democratic system in the United States and expressed her yearning and excitement for the White House. Will you build a swimming pool in the White House? Sia glanced at him gently. Are you crazy? In his heart, he wondered if he should let the poison vine lady capture this guy and use him as fertilizer. No, may I ask if superheroes should disclose their identities and register with the government? Thea could not help but look sideways. Did you transmigrate from Marvel next door? Superhero Registration Act? You're going to cause trouble. She couldn't deal with this problem. I can tell you clearly that I won't. Why? Do the people have the right to know? The other party asked aggressively. Thea glanced at the scene. Oliver stood beside her. Diana and Bruce Wayne were also present today as celebrities. Superman used Clark Kent's alias to mingle with the reporters. The Martian hunter stood diagonally behind as a security guard. The Missy frowned slightly and sorted out her words. Ridiculous. Superheroes did not take a single cent from the government and risked their lives to help others. What if their identity is exposed and they are attacked by bad people? Who will be responsible if their families die because of this? The people have the right to know? When did the people have the right to control the life and death of others? Is it given by the Constitution or God? The Missy asked 3 questions in a row. Her voice was flat but her tone was cold. The other party was a little stunned. He did not expect Thea's words to be so sharp. However, he came prepared and changed his angle. The people may not have the right, but the government should. Thea's smile was very fake. Of course, her words were even more fake. The government personnel are also made up of the people. The senior government officials are actually ordinary people. They are just a group of people who serve the country and society. After 8 years, they will return to being ordinary people. Your premise is not correct. Chapter 647. The reporters at the scene laughed softly. Thea was definitely lying through her teeth. Were these government officials ordinary citizens? They were either executives of major consortiums or elites in various industries. They would only go to a higher position after leaving the White House. However, the mainstream of society thought that they were ordinary citizens. This was very interesting. The reporter knew that Thea was lying, but he was speechless. He could not deny the current mainstream values, but Thea kept talking about democracy. He did not know how to respond. Are you advocating a government without people? If superheroes need to be registered, then we have to abandon the existing system and remove the human factor. Mr. Reporter, are you suggesting that we use supercomputers to control all systems according to established procedures to restrain everyone? Thea was getting more and more excited. Wasn't she just spouting nonsense? The deity of trade was related to language. She was not afraid of debate. The other party was stunned by her ability to change the topic. When did I say that I wanted to build a robot government? Sensing the funny looks of the people around her, she returned to the crowd dejectedly and did not say anything else. After dealing with a few more strange questions, the reporter let her go and threw the questions to the slightly dull Oliver. After an hour, the three of them finally finished all the procedures. Oliver quickly left the White House without saying anything. Thea also pulled Diana to meet up with a few superheroes. They went to the place she named the Hall of Justice to discuss the problem. The people and the higher-ups are afraid of superheroes. Batman changed back into his batsuit and spoke first. Thea's identity had been completely exposed, and Diana did not care. Superman was in between what could be exposed and what could not be exposed. He and the Martian Manhunter were firmly against revealing their identities. He was very sensitive to the smell of conspiracy as he pondered about others every day. I think it should be under the premise of voluntary participation. It depends on the individual's opinion on whether or not to disclose their true identity. We should give the individual the right to choose, and not a veto. Superman was very keen on this theory that his father had taught him, the so-called right to choose. No, what if someone impulsively announces their identity and regrets it later? Batman flatly refused. Powerful gods and aliens like you can choose to go public, but human superheroes can't do that. We'll grow old, and one day, we won't be able to wear capes anymore. What will we do then? Thea immediately supported Batman. This was the value of ordinary superheroes. They were not gods on Earth and could not run faster than the speed of light. Every time they put on a cape and walked on the streets, they were risking their lives to do something. They could lose their lives in an accident or fall from several floors and be paralyzed for life. If they were to reveal their identities, it would be too dangerous. I generally support Batman, but Superman's opinion can also be adopted. Earth superheroes can hide it, but if they really can't help it, we shouldn't oppose it. Thea tried to mediate the opinions of the two, but unfortunately, Superman and Batman were very stubborn. Superman was determined to give the choice to the individual. According to his original words, they had no right to make decisions for others. Batman, on the other hand, had an attitude of "I'm very experienced. They will regret it in the future, so I must take precautions in advance." The young lady's opinion was relatively neutral. She felt that Superman was too idealistic, and Batman thought too much about the dark side. Neither was suitable. As a result, the two refuted her again and criticized her for swaying her position. After that, Diana and the Martian Manhunter also joined in the discussion, and the five of them argued endlessly. In the end, They could only temporarily put aside the dispute and wait for more superheroes to appear before discussing this issue. In the next few days, Moira officially entered her role and began to meet frequently with people from all walks of life. To put it nicely, it was to listen to the opinions of all parties. To put it bluntly, it was to argue with a bunch of people. Moira was busy for a whole week before she cleaned up the mess left by the former president and began to patrol within her authority. The first stop was the Ministry of Defense. General Ryan led a group of senior military officials to accompany her. Thea was quite familiar with the Pentagon, and now she also came to watch. Her future policy was also discussed with her mother. Moira was very appreciative of Thea's way of making the former president spend all his time on military affairs and incur infamy. After that, the current president vigorously developed the people's livelihood. After taking a cursory look at the mothership in the dock and the giant mechs that were still training in the military base, Moira expressed her approval. After that, they came to the second stop, the Heaven's Eye Society. "Is this the new mutant you recruited?" Thea pointed to a female warrior in a purple-red bodysuit and asked Amanda. Now, there were more and more mutants in the Heaven's Eye Society. Dr. Light and Dr. Mist were the best among them. Including the Suicide Squad, their number was really not small. Hee. Her codename is Black Orchid. Amanda smiled a little awkwardly. The role had changed, and now she didn't know whether to answer Thea's question or not. Thea glanced at the female warrior and snorted softly. "It's the product of human experiments. You added the green of all things and the red of all things into the same body at the same time. This is the only survivor, right?" After that, she shook her head gently and let go of the topic. At the same time, she also praised the black technology of the Heaven's Eye Society. The green of all things and the red of all things, such things that deviated from the rules, how did they coexist in the human body? The Heaven's Eye Society bases were all over the country, and Moira didn't have the time to check them one by one. She just listened to some reports and completed the established procedures. It was just that she finally proposed to visit the Black House. The Black House had always been under Steve's direct control, and even Amanda, who now controlled the Heaven's Eye Society, didn't infiltrate it. But fortunately, Steve was a really patriotic person. For the president's order, he chose to directly execute it. Thea also took her mother's arm and stepped into the Black House. Chaos. Turning on the indoor lights, looking at the room in front of them that was comparable to a small library, the few people who entered for the first time all had the same feeling. The young lady ignored the gazes of the few people and looked at her own collection. After looking at the treasure house of the three Zeus brothers, she only had one thought. This place was simply a garbage dump. All kinds of messy things were piled up together, and there must be some high-quality goods. For example, at first glance, she saw a golden helmet in the shape of a full golden bell, quietly placed in the corner. This was the sole manifestation of the god of order of the two rivers, Nabu. The person who wore the helmet could instantly merge with Nabu and become a powerful mage, and had a lot of abilities such as time travel, immunity to aging, and precognition of danger. It was recorded that there were a total of 8 people who had worn this helmet, and they all called themselves Dr. Fate. Chapter 648. Ridiculous. Thea scoffed at their self-title. What was the point of being possessed by a god, assimilating their form of existence and gaining unparalleled power in a short period of time? They couldn't even see themselves clearly, yet they gave themselves the codename of Fate. It was ridiculous. Using the short decades of human life experience and knowledge to understand a god that had existed for tens of thousands of years, she could only say that she should cherish it. This was a possession artifact. The only lucky thing was that God Nabu was kind. Otherwise, God Nabu could be resurrected with a body. Sia used her divine telekinesis to check the helmet. The other party's spirit body was still full of vitality. However, there was a limit to how strong the spirit power was. She forced herself into his spiritual world and found that this guy was not a bad guy. It was just that his understanding of the order was too narrow and did not match her position as the god of wealth. Thea retreated embarrassedly. She couldn't absorb this guy's divine power. Her personality and position were both neutral. There was a big gap between her and the order. It was worthless. She crossed out the helmet and continued to watch with her mother. The floor was full of junk. Whenever the people of the Sky's Eye Society found something strange, they would throw it into the room. They didn't know what it was for, so the only way was to pile it up. Divine power, magic power, wizard power, and even some power that Thea couldn't name filled this space. Merlin's robe, African tribal totems, voodoo altars, Native Americans hunting javelins, and she even saw the writings of some on Myoji. The Sky's Eye Society must have robbed these things, right? These things were relatively harmonious, but they were all placed outside by Steve. The content inside was even more unbearable. Colonel Steve Trevor, can you tell me what this is? Thea pointed to a dried human head hanging on the shelf and asked Steve. Steve was quite serious. He took out his little notebook and flipped through it for a long time. It's the ancestral body of a small tribe called Kuka from Central Africa. Thea squinted at the body. It was horrifying just to look at it. Colonel Steve, this thing doesn't have a trace of magic wave. Take it out and burn it. Amanda responded with a sneer. She was happier than anyone to see Steve in trouble. He turned around and ordered his subordinates to deal with it. A few of his subordinates also felt that this thing was an eyesore hanging there. They all threw it into a bag with a look of disgust and prepared to take it out to deal with it. Thea originally didn't want to interfere, but seeing the mess here, she really couldn't bear it. For example, the head that had existed for hundreds of years was her ultimate outburst. What kind of lousy thing was it? It had been air-dried for hundreds of years. Even if it was thrown to a dog, the dog wouldn't eat it. Instead, it was hung up so conspicuously like a treasure. The Steve from 100 years ago was much more fun. However, she didn't make things too difficult for the Heaven's Eye Society. She would give her own suggestions regarding curses, and it was up to them whether they accepted them or not. Over the next few days, Moira began to tour various places. Considering that some places were indeed dangerous, Missy accompanied her to visit Belgrave Prison again. This prison on the Gulf of Mexico was surrounded by swamps, and the most notorious criminals in the United States were imprisoned here. 13,000 criminals were imprisoned here, and the prison guards all looked tough and well-equipped. The United States was very interesting. The result of the democratic system was a frighteningly high crime rate. 1 in 100 people in the country had been in prison. Prison culture was quite popular on a certain level. Prison Break and Shawshank's Redemption were all specialties formed by this unique culture. The mother and daughter followed the prison warden with a large number of guards. Defense Minister General Ryan and Heaven's Eye Society's Amanda also brought their own people to accompany and protect them. The prison warden was a black man with a fierce face and a tall figure. Thea didn't bother to look at him after a glance. This guy must have been greedy for money in this position. Strictly speaking, the main part of Belgrave Prison was underground. The criminals on the first floor were all ordinary people who had committed serious crimes. Once they entered the second level of the underground, there would be some capable and organized criminals. For example, Captain Lung Han, who Thea had dealt with before, and B-Woman, who controlled the B-Robots, were all imprisoned on this floor. On the fourth floor, which was the bottom floor, there were already many criminals with superpowers. Several elites of the Suicide Squad were imprisoned here in different areas. Some of the cells were specially modified for superpowers. Suicide Squad. Moira looked at the mission information of the Suicide Squad and was a little hesitant. She couldn't be blamed for thinking so. Amanda was simply too harsh on this group of people. She simply sent them to wherever they were needed. They entered and exited the most dangerous places and did the most dangerous jobs, and the reward was Amanda's empty promise of a reduced sentence. As for how long their original sentence was, no one knew. This was a little too much. Today, there were 5 members in the Suicide Squad. They were Death Archer, Clown Girl, Killer Crocodile, Revenge Demon, and Bronze Tiger, the Grandmaster of Combat who was defeated by Oliver in Star City a few days ago. Under Amanda's nervous gaze, Moira closed the document seriously. Treat them with respect. Don't give them a mission that will kill them. Black Skin Amanda immediately said that the leader was wise. She firmly supported her. Neither of them mentioned releasing these people. A lot of dirty work was not suitable to be left to the government, so these people could only do it. Moira looked at the general situation and was ready to go back. Thea gently squeezed her mother's hand and motioned for her to wait. She looked at Amanda with a smile and pointed to the ground. There's another floor below, right? You even put a layer of lead under the floor. Haha, I'm dying of laughter. Amanda immediately looked back at the prison warden. You pig, you're just making things worse. Unfortunately, the prison was still under the leadership of the Heaven's Eye Society. She could only force an explanation. The few criminals below are very strong and must be strictly guarded. She insisted that it was not to prevent them from looking around, but purely to prevent the criminals from escaping. There are stronger criminals. Moira, who was about to leave, suddenly became energetic. Her daughter was right beside her, so she was not afraid at all. She was just watching the fun. Amanda looked at Thea bitterly. The young lady smiled at her innocently. Mr. President, please come with me. But you must be careful. All the unrelated guards were dismissed, leaving only the mother and daughter, the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Defense. Including herself, there were a total of 5 people. They were very confident in the young lady's ability. If she could not withstand it, the security guards would die. Amanda led them to a wall. She performed pupil verification and keyed in a password. After 5 or 6 procedures, a spiral staircase appeared in front of them. As she walked, she introduced the few prisoners. They first came to a cell that was completely cast out of alloy. A burly man with grey skin, iron-like muscles, red eyes, black hair, and a face full of stubble was firmly fixed in the room. As if he heard the sound of the outside world, the man began to shout. Amanda, Fiercer only wants you dead. Fiercer only wants to strangle you with your intestines. His voice was so loud that it could be heard even through the thick metal cell. Amanda, who was an ordinary person without any superpowers, had a big heart. She looked normal as if she did not hear anything and introduced the man to them. This guy must be an alien. He can understand our language, but communication is not smooth. He acted recklessly on the streets of Philadelphia and then resisted arrest. We chased him 19 times in a row before we finally mixed nanobombs in his food and finally subdued him. Chapter 649. Amanda continued, it's worth mentioning that his self-healing ability is terrifyingly strong. His body was blown up from the inside by the bomb, but he recovered in less than 10 minutes. This guy should be under the supervision of the Alien Management Committee, right? Thea looked at Amanda indifferently. Black Panther's expression didn't change. He just smiled in return. Missy glared at him and didn't pursue the matter. She observed him closely. Violent Wolf Rob, the arrogant guy who called himself the only macho man, was a very famous bounty hunter in the universe. It was just his bad luck that he came to Earth. This guy couldn't be steamed or boiled. His body was so strong that even hell couldn't trap him. It was said that both hell and heaven put up signs to prohibit him from entering. Black Panther was quite capable for Amanda to be able to capture such a powerful person. Does Dr. Quinn know anything about him? Does he have a weakness? Amanda's eyes were sharp. She thought about the past and felt that Thea might know something about the alien in the cell. Before Thea could speak, the macho man inside shouted, "The only macho man has no weakness. He's invincible." Could it be that this guy is a lunatic? Looking at the brawny man whose hands and feet were chained to the metal frame in the cell and who was screaming hysterically, Moira was a little surprised. She had always lived in the relatively peaceful Star City and had never seen such a fierce person. Ah, this guy doesn't have a fatal weakness, but I know he likes dolphins. Isn't that right, Rob from Planet Sonia? Thea's last sentence was naturally directed at the cell. The other party instantly quieted down. His voice fluctuated. You know me. I heard about you from the Green Lantern Corps. Missy threw the blame to him. Go find trouble with the Green Lantern Corps if you can. Thea thought for a moment. This guy looked like a rough guy, but he was actually quite intelligent. He could even understand the theory behind the Atomic Man's suit. He had a genius level of intelligence and knew more than 10,000 languages. It was a pity that he was locked up here. Although he killed everyone on his planet, the future Batman pulled him into the American Justice League. The people on Earth probably wouldn't mind. Thea immediately said, "Rob, let's make a deal." There was silence for a few seconds. "Only Macho Man doesn't believe you. How about this? Let's make a 2-year agreement. Use your knowledge and combat power to help the people of Earth, and we'll give you your freedom. I'll also personally give you a cosmic dolphin. What do you think?" Thea felt that if Batman could whitewash this guy, she could too. Killing the people of an entire planet had nothing to do with the people of Earth. When Amanda heard that her prisoner was going to be released, she wanted to say something a few times, but she held herself back. She felt that this prison was impregnable, but Thea had a different opinion. With her sharp eyes, Thea had already noticed that it wasn't difficult for Robert to break free from his shackles. It was just that she didn't know what was going on in this guy's head, which was why he hadn't acted yet. There was no need for her to be criticized at all. She calmly exposed this layer of window paper. "Stop pretending. Sit up and let's talk." As soon as she finished speaking, Robert suddenly sat up under Amanda's nervous gaze. The metal shackles that bound his hands and feet broke like pieces of paper. Thea glanced at Amanda. The meaning in her eyes was nothing more than, "See, if I didn't come today, your intestines would have been pulled out and strangled by this rough guy next time." There was finally a trace of panic in Amanda's expression. The enemy wasn't restrained. If he rushed out, she, as an ordinary person, couldn't stop him. Robert broke free from his shackles, stretched his hands and feet, walked to the side of the cell, and looked at Thea through a thick layer of metal. He was 2 meters tall, and Thea was also 1.8 meters tall. She was wearing high heels, so the difference in height between them wasn't big. Robert's blood-red eyes looked at her for a long time, and the corner of his mouth had a trace of a sneer. "I've killed a few guys like you." Thea wasn't surprised that Robert had killed gods. The universe was too big, and there were always some old gods that fell into the hands of the strong and became a boast. Thea was fearless. "I'm not like them. You're no match for me. Haha. You're very strong. Do you have a space dolphin?" The two didn't talk about the release, and only talked about the content of the deal. "Yes, I only have 2, and I spent a lot of money to buy them." Thea controlled a large neutral business alliance. Diana liked all kinds of rare materials, and she liked cute little animals. There were very few space dolphins in the entire universe. This animal was similar to the Earth's dolphins. Its body was shiny, its belly was white, and its tail was swinging. It looked silly. The only difference was the living environment. One lived in the sea, and the other lived in space. Other habits were similar. Thea searched the universe and only found 2. Now, she was ready to take out one to make a deal. A bunch of Earth people couldn't compare to the value of a space dolphin. Robert was very clear. His eyes seemed to fall into some kind of memory. He could feel Thea's divine power. Robert didn't know what a god was, but he had been on the battlefield for a long time. He did kill old gods, and more than one. Making a deal with a strong person was completely in line with his principles. Not to mention that it was a space dolphin. He was still worried and asked, "As long as I help the Earthlings for 2 years?" "Yes, you can't kill, and you can't destroy. If the Earthlings ask you anything, you must tell them if you know. If there is an invasion, no matter what you are doing, you must wholeheartedly help the Earthlings to fight." Thea stated her requirements. Robert's scary big face thought for a while, and his scarlet eyes looked straight at Thea. "Okay, I promise you." Thea nodded and pulled Moira back a few steps. The 2 ministers and Amanda didn't know what she meant, but they also stepped back. Next, Robert punched the wall of the metal cell fiercely. The cell shook violently, but it didn't break. Amanda was relieved. However, this was just the beginning. Robert fully demonstrated what madness was to them. If one punch couldn't break it, he punched 10 times. When his left hand was broken, he changed to his right hand. When his right hand was also distorted, his left hand returned to normal. When he punched the 33rd time, The cell finally couldn't bear the weight and a big hole with a diameter of 1/2 meter was punched out. The only fierce man is out. Where's the dolphin? Robert didn't even look at his bloody fists. He opened his mouth and asked about the dolphin. See, Amanda? Your cell can't hold him at all. Thea looked at Black Panther playfully. Amanda felt lucky and embarrassed. She was speechless to the extreme. She secretly decided that she would send the guy who designed the cell to the Siberian Observatory later. Where's the only fierce man's dolphin? Robert saw that she ignored him and asked angrily. Don't worry, don't worry. Thea comforted him first. She didn't raise this thing on Earth. Chapter 650. The space dolphins were all raised in the universe. Sia opened a long-distance teleportation door and searched with her divine sense. She grabbed a round guy from the other side of the teleportation door. The sky dolphin was very uncomfortable when it was suddenly caught underground from the starry sky. When it saw Thea, it let out a happy cry and rubbed its big head against her calf for a while. Damn it! She was a little reluctant. Thea gently patted the dolphin's big head and felt that she should have lent it to Robert for 2 years instead of giving it to him. Unfortunately, she had already said it. Mortals could regret it, but she, the goddess of trade, could not easily break the deal. She could only pat the dolphin's big head and point at Robert regretfully. The intelligence of the Earth's dolphins was not low, and this dolphin floating in the air was even smarter. When it realized that its owner was going to abandon it, its happy little face suddenly collapsed and it cried twice with ultrasonic sound that normal people could not hear. Fortunately, Robert also had some skills. He sent out the same ultrasonic sound as the dolphin, and the man and the dolphin communicated. The little dolphin was in a dilemma and finally swam to Robert according to Thea's idea. Haha. You have gained the friendship of the only fierce man. I will help you in the next 2 years. Robert's big face was still ferocious, but he really liked dolphins. He rubbed his rough face hard against the little dolphin. The other party spat on his face, but he was not angry. Instead, he laughed. Moira saw that her daughter was a little disappointed, so she quickly changed the topic and whispered, "Won't this guy go back on his words?" Thea's disappointment came and went quickly. When she heard her mother's words, she said happily, "Robert's reputation is very good. He never goes back on his words. He will be our help in the next 2 years." Moira looked at the rough man who was teasing the little dolphin. From this angle, he did not look as fierce as before. The fear disappeared, and the politician's mind came out again. Can the Earth's dolphins also attract him? Thea thought for a moment. She remembered that Earth's dolphins also attracted him. It should be possible. Then it's easy. Moira nodded immediately. It was easy to deal with someone with a hobby. Didn't he like dolphins? Later, she would let her subordinates raise 180 dolphins. Such a super powerful force would be tied to the Earth. Was there a more suitable business than this? Getting rid of a hidden danger in advance and turning an enemy into a friend was a good thing for everyone. Rob's conduct was completely different from that of a superhero. In addition, this fellow had a fierce look on his face and a repulsive appearance. Who would believe that he was a superhero? However, as the hidden card of the government and the Heaven's Eye Society, Berserk Wolf Luo Bo would be very competent. Even Amanda was wondering if she should send the guy who designed the prison cell to raise dolphins instead of going to Siberia. Seeing that Robert and the little dolphin were playing happily, they decided to continue their sightseeing trip. Thea didn't have a habit of spoiling him. She had already given away her cute pet, so she should at least hear something. "Rob, follow me." Her tone was similar to ordering a slave. Violent Wolf Robber's expression was furious at first, but then it gradually calmed down. In the end, he even revealed a self-satisfied smile. "You're the boss. I'll listen to you, I'll listen to you. F***CK. Seeing this scene, Amanda was even more convinced of the importance of vigorously developing marine aquaculture. "Grandson, when the time comes, I'll smash you to death with 1,000 dolphins." The designer of the Sky's Eye Society's prison cell should be dragged out and shot, but the planner was still commendable. On the same floor, another cell was a few hundred meters away. There were several partitions in the middle and the path was very winding. Even if one of the prisoners escaped, the whole cell wouldn't be destroyed. Thea also asked Violent Wolf, "Do you know who else is on this floor?" He glanced at her and continued to tease the dolphin, shaking his head to show that he didn't know. The few of them walked into a cell that was filled with yellow light. Amanda pointed at a woman in green who was sleeping on her side and introduced, "Mr. President, the woman you're looking at now was captured after we sacrificed a lot of agents. Her technological weapons are very, very special." "Are you talking about that ball? Why didn't you confiscate her weapon?" Moira asked, pointing to an eyeball floating beside the woman that seemed to be magnified more than 10 times. "This weapon is beyond our scope of understanding. It seems to have some kind of displacement ability. Even if we take it away and imprison it, it will automatically return to the woman. Her weapon can absorb the energy in the air and turn it into an energy beam to launch it. We accidentally found that it has a particularly poor resistance to yellow light, which led to the scene you see today." Amanda said it so casually that she didn't even mention the sacrifice of the agents in the process. Thea just looked and didn't speak. She also knew this guy who was locked up. She was the Queen of Emerald Eyes who came from the 31st century. Her weapon was the result of technological transformation of the eyes of an alien Green Lantern. She didn't know what kind of black technology they used to add some green light ring functions in the eyeball, which was why it could emit green light beams and was afraid of yellow light. Moira glanced at Thea as if nothing had happened. Thea shook her head gently. This woman was different from Violent Wolf. She had no value. It was impossible for the big eyeball weapon to be popularized. If the Earth's army had a magically modified light ring, it would be a disaster. Even if the young lady now mastered almost 3 kinds of emotional spectrum, she had to say that once emotional energy was abused, the universe would explode in minutes. The Queen of Emerald Eyes also didn't have the experience of clearing her name, so let her continue to stay in prison. Amanda was also staring at her face. Seeing her shake her head, she felt relieved. She continued to take them to see the last prisoner. This cell was thicker and larger than the previous 2. From a distance, it looked like half of a mountain had been cut off and a small part in the middle was hollowed out to hold the prisoner. There were no electrical components, no mechanical devices, and the most important thing was that there was no light inside, not even a trace of light. "Sorry, Mr. President, we can only look at this prisoner." Amanda pointed to the thing that looked more like a boulder than a cell and said to them, "What a joke, Amanda, what do you want us to see?" The current Minister of Defense, General Ryan, who accompanied the tour, was very upset. The Ministry of Defense didn't know about these 3 prisoners. If Thea hadn't exposed them today, how long would they have been kept in the dark? "Mr. Minister," Amanda didn't lie. "This prisoner is really dangerous." Thea looked inside and was indeed shocked. She hurriedly stopped the old general who was about to argue with Amanda. This prisoner was very dangerous, at least to ordinary people. It was definitely the highest level of danger. She turned to Black Panther and asked, "I want to ask a question. This target seems to be beyond the limit of your ability. Can you tell me how you captured him?" Amanda sighed. She had nothing better to do but offend the Ministry of Defense. She had no choice. This guy wasn't captured by us. He came here on his own accord. He called himself Johnny Solo. We've investigated him, and if his name isn't wrong, he used to be a mime. However, he disappeared due to an accident, and when he reappeared, his appearance had changed greatly. He claimed that he came here to surrender on the orders of a god called the King of Tears. Although we can't show you now, we still have the video from before. Amanda then handed Moira a tablet. Everyone, including Thea, came over to watch it. The video was very short. A well-dressed man walked into the Heaven's Eye Society's base calmly. Faced with several weapons aimed at him, he raised his hands and surrendered. Chapter 651. However, when the agents took off his hood, they were all shocked. He was glowing faintly, and there was a mask on his face. He didn't have the brain or hair that a normal person would have. There was only a mask on his face, and there was nothing behind it. After the agents of the Sky's Eye Society inspected him, An even more shocking fact was revealed. He was wearing human clothes, but there was no body. His suit, tie, and gloves were all just decorations. Other than calling himself Johnny Solo and surrendering to the Sky's Eye Society under the orders of someone called the King of Tears, he refused to reveal any information. When Amanda asked him to take off his mask, he said very seriously that anyone who saw his face would die. Seeing such a great danger to society, Amanda had no choice but to lock him up until today. Thea observed him for a long time. He wasn't lying. Anyone who saw his face would die. This guy's aura was undoubtedly that of a god's chosen. However, this King of Tears didn't seem to be a god from Earth. She wasn't surprised. There were very few gods, but there were also a lot of them. Earth had a bunch of gods, so there were naturally some on other planets as well. Heromir, who was killed earlier, was a god from Mars. Rao, who Supergirl Fura and the others always talked about, was also a god from Krypton. It wasn't surprising that there was a god that she didn't know. This King of Tears was different from the professional gods on Earth. He was more like a god of rules. The big rules, such as time, space, life, and death. These were rules that even Darkseid was dumbfounded when he saw them. He couldn't understand anything else either. However, this god was different. He wrote a rule of his own, and that was to kill anyone who saw him. In Thea's opinion, this rule was too restrictive. One had to see him for it to take effect. According to this rule, the air would disappear when it saw him, and the stars would explode when they saw him. However, he couldn't withstand such a huge backlash, so he had to find a place to hide. This chosen completely followed his teachings. He usually wore a mask, but when he needed to, he would take it off. Wow, the world would be peaceful. This attack method was exactly the same as Diana's usual accumulation of power by wearing the Silver Guardian bracelet and the artificial spiritual talent that Thea had created for Cassandra. They both required daily accumulation. Seeing that Amanda was looking at her with hope, Black Panther couldn't wait for the Missy to quickly pull this bomb away and throw this planet at the edge of the universe as far away as possible. However, she was disappointed. Thea shrugged and said, "Sorry, I really don't know anything about this guy. I can only be sure that this god is not from Earth. This guy is a half-spirit. I don't think I can kill him with my current methods." As for the Tear King behind him, Thea frowned and racked her memory. She remembered that the King of Tears had come to Earth, but he was quickly defeated by the spirits and turned into a teardrop. Who is stronger between me and Ghost? Ghost has the problem of being strong at times and weak at other times, but overall, he is still very strong. After all, he is the vengeful spirit of God. Just like the guardian of Oua planet, Ganther, once said that Ghost was not as strong as him, and he was pressed to the ground and called Daddy after 2 seconds. Thea was definitely stronger than Ganther now, but she did not think that she could defeat the vengeful spirit of God. Among the people she had met so far, the strongest were the 3 demonic palaces, the Heavenly Father, and Zeus, who had gone to create a Smurf. The only ones who were stronger than her were Hades, Mithrin, and a few others, but they weren't much stronger than her. The Heavenly Father should be on the same level as Zeus, and the 3 palace demons should be stronger than them. In general, the 3 palace demons were not as strong as Ghost. Thea felt that Ghost would not have any more trouble fighting her than fighting Ganther. At most, she would last for 2 more moves. The conclusion made her unhappy. In the eyes of the real bosses, she was probably not much different from Amanda and the others. Ghost was not a suitable reference. It was hard to tell who was stronger between the King of Tears and Thea. She thought about it and decided to be more cautious. This King of Tears should be very strong, maybe stronger than me. I suggest that we keep him here. Amanda was speechless. Why would you keep such a dangerous person with me? Aren't you embarrassed? The young lady was very thick-skinned. She chose to ignore Amanda's resentful gaze. She pulled her mother out without saying anything. General Ryan did not dare to stay any longer when he saw that even a superhero like her was about to run away. He hurriedly followed the team. Before everyone boarded the plane, Thea thought about it and taught Amanda a method. That guy has surpassed the definition of life and death. You can't kill him with your current methods, but you can restrain him. Amanda immediately listened carefully. He has the law of death when he sees someone's face. It's not difficult for you to deal with him. Set up a few more mirrors. The moment he takes off his mask, you can use the mirrors to reflect his face. Then he'll die? Amanda was very concerned about this bomb that could explode at any time. She asked hurriedly. I don't think he'll die. But according to our language, the most we can do is exile him out of the material world. As for where he'll go after that, I don't know. Thea was not lying. This Johnny Solo had been active for a long time. He was the enemy of the Justice Association. He was a villain who had been defeated many times. His physical body had been sacrificed to the King of Tears. It was a bit like a licker's phylactery. He was immune to any external damage. Unless the King of Tears was killed, this half-spirit could not be killed. After that, she gave Amanda a teleportation gem just in case. Then, the group left Belgrave Prison. As for Violent Wolf Rob, he was directly sent to the Alien Administrative Committee. Fiora was one of the leaders after all, so she could not fight often. Now, with Firestorm and Violent Wolf, the Administrative Committee finally had something to show for it. In the dead of night, Thea returned to the underground of Belgrave Prison. There were too many people during the day, so it was very inconvenient to do anything. Naturally, she returned to deal with this hidden danger. Since he was willing to walk into the trap, then she would let him continue to stay. She did not know the effect of the Eye of Obliteration on this guy who did not have a physical body, so she chose a safer method. That was the method that many heroes used to deal with the Great Demon King. Seal him. The research of modern magic on seals could be said to have reached a peak. The young mistress, who had combined the strengths of ancient and modern magic, was one of the best. She drew a magic circle and created nodes. Finally, Thea connected the magic circle to the new creator's star's magic net and used the magic net to power the seal. In order to prevent him from suddenly activating his power, Thea set up 2 seals. Even if one was broken, the other would immediately replace it. Chapter 652. According to Thea's calculations, Johnny Solo's ultimate ability only lasted for a short period of time. If he didn't accumulate 500 years' worth of time, he wouldn't be able to break through the second seal. Of course, this was the most conservative calculation. If an ex-mime could understand the law of magic so easily, the current generation of sorcerers would have to kill themselves with a piece of tofu. Thea even maliciously thought that this guy might need 500 years to figure out the law of the enchantment. Another 500 years of accumulation? By the time he came out, the King of Tears had already turned into ashes. After solving the hidden danger as a nameless hero, Thea and Moira patrolled around the country for the next few days. It took them half a month to sort out all the relationships and get their work on the right track. It was hard to say whether the halo of being the first daughter or being a superhero was more dazzling, but she was now more eye-catching. She didn't deliberately avoid the attention of the outside world, but the intimate image of her and Diana was still unknowingly taken. Thanks to the fact that Diana's true identity was not exposed, yes, that's right, the heroine's high-speed movement during the battle, coupled with her shoulder-length hair, armor, and greatsword, different from her usual ponytail and glasses, made these seriously face-blind media unable to recognize her. The romance of a superhero. This was a tabloid, and they directly used eye-catching headlines to attract attention. The first daughter's mysterious lover is a British aristocrat. This was not wrong. Diana was now a British citizen, because she had been in the front line of poverty eradication for many years, and she also had a knighthood awarded by the Queen. Those with the title of Doctor must be addressed as Doctor, and those with titles must be addressed as Your Excellency. Diana had to be addressed as Your Excellency Prince in official media reports. For a time, Britain and the United States were arguing because of their relationship. Britain looked down on the other side of the ocean, thinking that they were just nouveau riche, and their words were full of jealousy. So what if they were rich? Could they do whatever they wanted with money? At the same time, the other side looked down on them, thinking that they were just poor relatives, and at the same time, they were also envious of the history of the old aristocrats. The ancestral land and old houses were not worth much, But when they bragged about William the Conqueror, it was much better than the few poorhouses on the Mayflower. Because their relationship was exposed, the media on both sides of the ocean attacked each other, and the two parties were not aware of it, doing what they should do. What a joke. Moira entered the White House. Thea did not go there often, especially when Diana was around. She was lying in her mansion in the metropolis, holding a newly published comic in her hand. The content of the comic was a little evil. It was about her and Diana's story. The young mistress was engrossed in the painting. Her image was 70 to 80% similar to a certain Toria. The artist had most likely studied art at the foot of a basin, and the style of the painting was exquisite and beautiful. In order to show off the aura of a superpower and suppress the Englishman, a crown was added to her head, making her look even more alike. Because they did not know the true strength of the heroine, they made up a story about a queen rescuing a sick girl. The rest of the story was about the ancient aristocrats and the king of the new era meeting and getting to know each other, all the way to the end of the story where they fell in love. Valkyrie picked up the comic and flipped through it. The entire story was about how the young mistress was wise and mighty in fighting criminals, while she herself was a salted fish who only knew how to shout "Liu Liu 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 Liu." This made her very unhappy. How could they draw her so weak? Why am I so weak? This is too much. Looking at Diana's red face, Thea held her belly and laughed, causing Diana to chase after her. Diana's original purpose was to protect the Earth, and she did not want to expose her true identity. Although she was very unhappy, she did not run to the media to show her strength. However, 2 days later, she regretted it. A group of criminals somehow found out her whereabouts. In order to become famous, they avoided Thea, and more than 10 people with automatic weapons went to kidnap the sick girl, Diana Prince. Even with the wisdom of Athena, Diana was initially confused. It took her a long time to realize that these people thought she was a pushover. Wonder Woman exploded and taught these ignorant criminals an unforgettable lesson. Are you still not going to reveal your true identity? Thea asked while holding back her laughter. Diana thought carefully for a long time, but still shook her head. Mother said that my duty was to silently protect the Earth and mankind. I should not be exposed. Seeing that she was unwilling, Thea did not force her. As long as this period of time passed, the media would naturally be too lazy to report it. Time passed slowly, and it was already March. Moira had been in office for 2 months. Last month, she personally landed on Mars. This was the first national leader to land on an alien planet. This alone was enough to be recorded in history. Thea and Diana's storm gradually subsided in the official media, but on some indescribable websites, the two had become a hot search term, with all kinds of pictures and comics. Some of the artists were really good, and Milady even registered an account just to follow the latest issue. In between her daily entertainment, she did not forget about her business. Technological products were slowly being transferred to civilian use. Although the military was dissatisfied, in the face of the huge financial group, their complaints were dispensable. Clean energy projects had always been the focus of the Quinn Group's development. Even during the time of Robert Sr., it was the group's main product. Now, Milady, who was full of black technology, had maximized this advantage. She did not need to control all the resources, nor did she have that much energy. Trade and wealth were not about accumulation, but about circulation. So, it was imperative to share some of the work and profits. In just a month, the Quinn Group continued to cooperate with financial groups from all over the world. Flying in the sky, running on the ground, swimming in the water, clothing, food, housing, transportation, all kinds of industries came to seek cooperation. Now, in her office was an old acquaintance, Lex Luthor's sister, Lena Luthor. This little girl was 2 years younger than Thea. She inherited the mess left by her brother early and worked hard in the business world. Luthor Enterprises, which had been eroded by many investors, now showed signs of revival. Although Thea was also one of these investors, it did not affect the relationship between the two. Especially after the little girl knew that she was a superhero, she even had a little admiration. Well, Lena, I've finished reading your plan. If you can understand the technology of the maglev car, then we can cooperate, After finalizing the intention of cooperation, the specific details could be discussed by the subordinates. Even if Luther Enterprises was not as good as it used to be, with the scientific and technological achievements left behind before, it was still a behemoth. It could be revived by handling a few big projects. Lena was not like her evil-looking mother, nor was she as arrogant as her brother. It could be said that she was an anomaly in the Luther family. Chapter 653. The two of them chatted for a while before Lena got up and left. When she pushed the door open, she bumped into another girl. The two of them didn't know each other, but the friendly Lena still greeted each other. The two of them nodded and brushed past each other. Thea then looked at the person at the door and was surprised. Kara? What's the matter? Little Supergirl, who had a lot on her mind, turned around and watched Lena walk away before she slowly walked into the office. She looked around for a long time, and Thea was confused. The young mistress did not know what she was up to. She sat calmly on the chair and waited. Today, little Supergirl came to visit in normal clothes. Whether it was the Martian hunter, Superman, or even her adoptive mother, they all asked her to keep a low profile. The consequence of keeping a low profile was that her taste in clothes was a mess. It was clearly a dress that cost thousands of dollars, but it smelled like dirt when she wore it. Sister Thea. Supergirl took off her glasses and looked around. When she saw that the environment was safe, she spoke in a low voice. The young mistress crossed her legs and waited for her to continue. Look at my ears. Supergirl clenched her fists and finally said a complete sentence. Thea looked at Supergirl, who lifted her hair and white earlobes. She was confused. What was she trying to show her? Little Supergirl seemed to know that her behavior was ridiculous. She explained embarrassedly, that. I don't have ear piercings. Thea saw her touching her ears and could not help but touch her own ears. Why was she telling her this all of a sudden? Hey, why don't you get it? The girl was a little anxious. I want to make a hole, but Earth's tools won't work. Damn. Sia finally realized what was going on. Who knew what she was trying to say? She just wanted to make an ear piercing. She did not expect the Kryptonian's body of steel to have such a problem. Looking at Supergirl's pitiful eyes, the young mistress scratched her head. Divine bodies did not have such a problem. They could control every muscle to make ear piercings automatically. She was like that, and so was Diana. But the Kryptonians did not know how to do it. She first contacted Fiora, who was working as the head of the Alien Merchant Alliance to develop the trade. At first, the female adjutant thought it was a big deal. When she heard that it was such a problem, she did not know whether to laugh or cry. However, she had pierced her ears on Krypton. At that time, she had not absorbed the yellow sun, and her body was only slightly stronger than that of the people on Earth. She did not have the problem that Kara was having now. When Kara left Krypton, he was only 12 years old. He was still young, so he missed the best opportunity. Right now, Fiora couldn't think of any good ideas. Thea then went to ask Superman. Clark didn't need to have his ears pierced, but how did he clean up the stubble on his face? Thea was just about to make a call to ask. Heat rays. After getting this answer, Thea was stunned for a moment. Presumably, in order to come up with this method, Superman must have spent a lot of time practicing. Thea put down the phone and said to Supergirl with uncertainty, try using heat rays. Control the temperature and use the refraction of the mirror. As it turned out, Supergirl was indeed an amazing warrior. She could learn all the skills related to combat in one go. Unfortunately, heat rays could only shave the stubble. If it was too much heat, the mirror would not be able to withstand it. If it was too little, it would be ineffective. Thea tried using her gaze again, but the effect was minimal. She was afraid that if she used too much force, Supergirl's ears would be destroyed. That would be a great sin. Let's do it the hard way. Follow me. The office could not do such a big job. Thea dragged Supergirl to Paradise Island. Diana also heard the news and came to watch the show. A fine gold drill, paired with an electric drill that I added some speed. Come, lie here. Let's try it. The young lady rolled up her sleeves, wore a hat, a mask, and a white lab coat. She held the electric drill like a mad scientist and gestured for Supergirl to lie down. Looking at the shiny electric drill in her hand, Supergirl would be lying if she said she was not afraid. However, when she thought about how others could wear earrings while she could not, she gritted her teeth and endured it. Kara lay on the rock as if she was going to be executed. Thea tied up Kara's hair, adjusted it, and pierced it into her ears. It had to be said that after being modified with advanced technology, her electric drill had a high conversion rate of speed. Paired with the fine gold drill, which was already hard to begin with, and added with toughness and sharpness enchantments, she had a 30% chance of piercing Kara's ears. However, reality gave her a slap in the face. The speed power she stole from Reverse Lightning ran wildly. The drill shattered into pieces and Supergirl screamed. Thea thought that something happened and hurriedly stopped. However, when she asked about the situation, she found out that it was too noisy. She sealed off Supergirl's 5 senses and ignored the bitterness on Supergirl's face. Thea took the electric drill and continued to strike. After drilling for 3 minutes, she stood up embarrassedly. The fine gold drill was ground to nothing. Under the high-speed rotation, it completely turned into powder. After pulling Kara up and blowing off the fine gold powder on her face, Diana and Thea looked at each other. Kara's earlobe was still small and clean. There was not even a mark on it. Maybe the fine gold isn't tough enough. Can we try a dragon tooth that is tougher and tougher? Forger Master Diana suggested. After a quarter of an hour, only half of the dragon tooth was left. However, Kara's ear was still nowhere to be seen. The little girl seemed to know that she had caused trouble for the 2 big sisters. She shrunk her neck and did not dare to say anything. Diana hugged her elbows and tilted her head. After thinking for a long time, she took out a dark green thin sword. Hermes' snake sword. It's one of the best even among the divine weapons. It contains a trace of space attribute. Okay. Thea happily took it. The 2 did not ask for the little girl's opinion. One sat on her, and the other pressed her feet. From afar, it looked like they were doing something bad. They gave Kara another round of punishment. The 2 big sisters were sweating from exhaustion. Perhaps the space attribute worked. They finally saw some effect. A small hole was made in Kara's ear. However, it was too early for them to be happy. Before the 3 girls could celebrate, they saw the hole in her ear closed instantly. Thea was so angry that her eyes were straight. She gasped for breath. You. Forcing me to use kryptonite. Kara was also about to cry. Her healing ability was so strong. There was nothing she could do. Kryptonite could only be talked about. Unlike Superman, who had a complete outlook on the world and life, to a certain extent, he could rely on his willpower to resist the damage of kryptonite. Kara Danvers was just a little girl. She did not have willpower. As soon as Thea took out her kryptonite, she fell to the ground like a salted fish without even touching it. If there was direct skin contact, wouldn't the little girl die instantly? Why don't I use the holy sword? It can permanently damage Doomsday. It's easy to give you an ear, Thea said as she pulled out the holy sword. Did she have to make such a big fuss? Kara looked at the dazzling sword and felt his liver tremble. Diana looked at her lover in annoyance. You can't control that sword well, right? Do you have any technological means? Yes, technological means. Kara nodded like a chick pecking at rice. She was afraid that the holy sword would cut off her ear. Chapter 654. Technological means. If she had a choice, she would not have used the holy sword. It would be troublesome if she could not control such a powerful weapon. The young mistress went through the current technology and her own black technology in her mind, and she really thought of a way. When Luthor collected Superman's cells, he used a nano-level robot. Thea thought the robot's needle was kryptonite, but later she found out that Luthor used a fake kryptonite in order to not be discovered by Superman. Just like kryptonite, it could degrade Kryptonian cells, but the process was very subtle and unnoticeable. To be able to bypass Superman's supersenses and blatantly harvest cells, one had to admit that Luthor was really powerful. The fake kryptonite should be able to solve Kara's current problem. It could even be used to shave Superman's beard and Fura's hair and eyebrows. This technology was definitely not in the list of commercial acquisitions. Other than asking Luthor himself, she could only look at his records. Fortunately, Thea had a good relationship with Lena Luthor. She left Diana to accompany Kara and teleported to the Luthor group. Lena Luthor knew her intention. Of course, Thea would not say that she wanted to get her ears pierced. Her excuse was to deal with Kryptonian artificial weapons. Lena readily agreed to let her see Luthor's notes. Luthor was very knowledgeable and had deep knowledge in all walks of life. Thea stayed in Luthor's old house for half a day before she found the composition and manufacturing process of the fake kryptonite in the vast records. She did not need modern equipment to produce it. Firestorm had the ability to create inorganic materials out of thin air. She found the fat old man and told him about Luthor's notes in detail. She also consulted Berserk Wolf Rob's opinion and directly created a large piece of fake kryptonite. She returned to Paradise Island with this piece of kryptonite. This time, it finally worked. Kara successfully pierced 2 ears and flew home happily. After a busy day, Thea was too lazy to go home. She decided to stay at Paradise Island for the night. The two rode their horses around the island twice. Thea saw that Diana was in high spirits, so she happily played with her. In the end, nothing happened to them. The 2 horses were so tired that they almost fainted. They had been staying at home with Hades every day, so there was no need for them to run like this. The 2 goddesses let go of the pitiful pony and strolled through the mountains. When they reached the top of the mountain, they happened to see the slowly descending sun. I really envy Kara. She's so carefree. She's so happy. The afterglow shone on the Valkyrie's face, accentuating her perfect cheeks and sharp nose. For a moment, she seemed to be enveloped by a sense of divinity. Thea didn't say anything. Instead, she sat on the ground. Diana also sat down. The 2 of them leaned closely together. You seem to be in a bit of a rush recently. I haven't seen this kind of emotion from you in a long time. Diana turned her face and looked into her lover's eyes. Thea did not mention that she suddenly felt a sense of crisis because of the King of Tears. She wasn't strong enough. So what if she was the King of Earth? It was just a matter of a finger in front of the real big shots. Especially since she had sacrificed so much for this world. There were so many people who had ties with her. At first, she might have been able to run if she couldn't win. Now, could she still run? Even if she could run, how many people could she take with her? The Martian hunter was a good example. Although he didn't say it, Thea knew that he had always regretted that he didn't have the ability to save his people. In the face of a real catastrophe, how much stronger could she be compared to him? However, these words were not suitable for Diana to hear. The warrior god required more confidence. If Diana knew that there were so many big shots above her, it would be difficult for her to take another step forward. After thinking about it, she gave a reason. I've told you about the new Creator Star and the Apocalypse Star, right? Recently, both sides have been preparing intensely. The war could start at any time. This war might decide the ultimate fate of the multiverse. This topic was also very heavy. However, the war between good and evil was very much in line with Diana's wishes. She would not stop her lover from participating in such a war. She even hated herself for not reaching the final step. She had worked very hard and felt that she was only a step away. Don't give yourself pressure. There aren't many people in this universe who are stronger than you, right? I'm confident in you, Diana said with a smile at the corner of her mouth. Indeed, there aren't many who are stronger than me, Thea said energetically. Looking at Diana's red lips under the sunset, they were bright and dazzling. She couldn't help but kiss them. After staying on Paradise Island for 2 days, Thea felt that there was no need to give herself too much pressure. She had already reached the top of the world. If she was still as scared as a quail, how could an ordinary person live? She tried to reduce her working hours and increase her leisure time. This was her way to relieve her pressure. Following comics was a good method she had found during this period of time. Many comics artists had already made the story of her and Diana vivid and vivid. The content was evil and the style was bold. Even she, the subject of the story, was overwhelmed with emotions. On this day, while she was following the latest issue of the comic, the secretary walked in steadily. She hurriedly closed the website and pretended to be very serious. An unknown person sent a USB flash drive. "My computer knowledge can't decipher the password," Miss Maisie said as she handed her a USB flash drive. Thea's attention was attracted. Miss Maisie had been by Luther's side for many years and could be considered a talent in various fields. There were not many things that she could not decipher. She inserted the USB flash drive into her computer and activated the artificial intelligence to crack it. The secretary casually reported her work and walked out calmly. Even with Gideon's strong abilities, it took him 3 minutes to crack the password on the USB flash drive. When she entered the USB flash drive, there was only a video file parked there. Seeing that Gideon did not send out an alarm signal, she opened the file directly. Harrison Wales, or rather, Reverse Lightning's thin face appeared in the video. Dr. Quinn's technology is really commendable. This encryption is a technology from 500 years later. Your world is really scary. From the beginning to the end, I only have one goal, and that is to go home. When you see this video, I'm most likely no longer in this world. Oh, no, I won't die. Reverse Lightning waved gently at the camera. I've found the way home, but I want to say that I've been really happy in the 15 years I've been here. Reverse Lightning took off his glasses and rubbed his forehead. I hope you can help me pass the following video to Barry at the appropriate time. Hello, Barry. When you see this video, I'm probably no longer here, no longer in your world. As for whether I'm going home or going to another parallel universe, I can't say for sure. 15 years, I've silently watched you grow from a teenager to a young man. Although you'll hate me for killing your mother, I feel. Reverse Lightning was very uncertain when he said this. Chapter 655. In the end, Reverse Lightning didn't say what he didn't understand, so he vaguely missed the topic. Barry, we're not really enemies. I'm sorry about what happened to your mother. I'm here to give you what you need the most. Hand over what I'm about to say to the police. After Reverse Lightning finished speaking, he sat up straight and looked straight at the camera. My name is Harrison Wales. My mind is intact and my body is healthy. I admit that on the night of March 18, 2000, I killed Nora Allen. I stabbed her chest with a dagger. Following that, Reverse Lightning described the events of that night, excluding the part about the power of speed, the time, the location, and the murder weapon. He described it as a normal murder case. Although this video couldn't bring Barry's mother back to life, it could clear Barry's father's name. It could be said that it was his final gift. Thea didn't hesitate and called the Advanced Technology Laboratory. What? Barry isn't here. Caitlin isn't here either. Saika, who answered the phone, gave her a piece of bad news. When she asked further, she found out that the two had disappeared for 2 days and 3 nights. Saika was now looking for them on the national network. Thea thought for a moment and still teleported to Central City. In this time, Barry was still young, but Caitlin was no longer a rookie under the training of Death Knell, Fura, and the others. Whether it was fighting ability or superpower, she was steadily above average. Eliminating the possibility of them eloping, it was most likely that they ran into some big trouble and didn't even send a message back. Caitlin also had a light ring, but the light ring's call was like a stone sinking into the sea. There were only 2 explanations. She was either dead or had left this universe. Considering that Reverse Lightning had found a way to leave this world, these two couldn't have followed Reverse Lightning and then transmigrated, right? When Thea found Saika, her thoughts were confirmed. The Lightning Squad discovered Reverse Lightning's whereabouts 3 days ago. Although Saika swore that he was good at searching, Thea felt that Reverse Lightning's mind wasn't clear after recording the video, so he purposely exposed his tracks. It was supposed to be a showdown between the two of them, but Caitlin had always believed that Thea cared about Reverse Lightning's life, so she no longer held back. Wearing her yellow light ring, she gave chase. Saika, on the other hand, didn't have the same speed. Unfortunately, He was left at home and stayed there for 2 days until Thea came looking for him. They're most likely no longer in this universe. Find the place where they last disappeared. I'll go take a look, Thea instructed the troubled Psyche. Then, she saw Psyche looking at her with his mouth wide open. Really? Are you sure there's a parallel space? Yes. Thea didn't say anything in her heart. Je ne bois Cisco Ramon, when your superpower awakens, you can even travel through parallel universes as you wish. She did not know when this idiot's superpower would awaken, and there was no need to wait. The mother box could travel through all the parallel timelines, and Zeus Lightning Arrow could traverse the timelines. Thea's current means were extremely plentiful. As long as someone was still alive, she could find them. How do you need to get there? I mean, you can travel through parallel universes? Psyche looked at her with a curious expression. How would Miss Thea know how the mother box worked? The technological level of the new Creator Star and Apocalypse Star was countless years ahead of Earth. Batman even used steel bones. He had never heard of anyone who had researched and understood this thing. Psyche did not speak with a straight face. Only then did he remember that his good friend Barry and his big sister Caitlin were still missing. He patted his head and began to check their last traces. New Jersey. It's 35 kilometers from Pennsylvania in New Jersey. That's where the tracker in Barry's suit disappeared. When Thea confirmed the location and prepared to observe the scene, she saw Psyche staring at her with an aura that said, "If you don't take me there, I'll kill myself here." Miss Thea took a closer look. The cells in Psyche's body were extremely active. As long as there was a little stimulation from the outside world, he would break through his original shackles. It could be said that he was only one step away from becoming a shockwave. However, she could not explain this to him, so she changed her words. "I have a feeling that if you come with me, this journey will be very exciting for you. However, your previous life will completely leave you. Are you prepared?" Choice, another choice. Giving others a choice was such a wonderful thing. Psyche did not understand the deeper meaning behind her words. He found it funny and said, "There will be danger. Traveling through parallel universes will turn me into a different life form?" No, you're completely wrong. You have the potential to become a superhero. Do you know Psyche Ramon? Your cells are very active now, and you're only one step away from complete formation. A little stimulation from the outside world, perhaps a bullet or a speeding car, will bring a new world to your eyes. Are you prepared for this? Psyche wanted to say yes. In this day and age, other than people like Batman and Siva, who would say no to superpowers? However, he understood his own feelings. He was far from prepared. Just a second before Thea was about to activate the teleportation, he finally made up his mind. "I'm not prepared, but Barry is my brother. I have to save him." His expression and words were sincere. Thea did not say anything more. At most, she would send him back if there was any danger. She watched as he turned around to pack his things. He took a big bag of toothbrushes and tissues, and wished he could take a few tablets. "Do you think we're going out to play?" Thea threw away his messy things and handed him a pistol. Then, she dragged him along and activated the teleportation. The two of them arrived at the scene and followed the tracker's instructions. Even though it had been 2 days, the traces left behind by the lightning speed were still fresh in their minds. Occasionally, Caitlin's frost blast would be scattered all around them. Psyche raised his pistol and moved forward carefully. Seeing how careful he was, Thea wanted to laugh. However, in order to train him, she did not say that there were no enemies in a radius of a few miles. "We're here. The tracker should have reached here. The error should be about 100 meters. Psyche walked to the side of a small path and lowered his head to measure with his device for a long time before he said with certainty. After that, he stared at Thea intently. He wanted to see how the process of traveling through parallel universes worked. Thea used her heart to feel the surrounding aura. The aura was deep and powerful. She felt that it was good news. These guys did not travel through time. If she was not wrong, they had run into a parallel universe. She reached out and touched her earring. She compared the information stored in the mother box and matched the corresponding space coordinates. With a loud bang, an orange tunnel appeared in front of them. Chapter 656. Thea didn't know which part of Earth they were on. She dragged Psyche, whose mouth was wide open, and jumped in. She had planned to use her magic to protect Psyche. After all, there were no conditions set in the sonic tunnel. Theoretically, anyone could walk through it. However, even the weakest of the new gods was stronger than Psyche. She was afraid that he would explode and die. However, the outcome was gratifying. The sonic boom channel had directly facilitated Psyche's final step. His shockwave ability had completely awakened, and the sonic boom channel, which would have caused some damage to him, was now like a gentle breeze. Psyche Ramon had silently completed his metamorphosis without even realizing it. The two of them walked out of the tunnel. What greeted them was not the smiling faces of Barry and Caitlin, but several weapons spewing energy bullets. Before Psyche could react, Thea waved her hand and a light screen blocked the attack. "Who are you?" 6 or 7 men pointed their weapons at the two of them. Even though they had more people than Thea, they were still very nervous. They were all dressed in rags. Even the energy guns in their hands, the only thing that gave them courage, were about to run out of energy in Thea's eyes. She ignored these fugitives and looked around. Judging from their language, they were still on Earth. As for whether they were in the New Jersey of this universe, it was hard to tell. The cars on the side of the road were piled up messily. The roads were badly damaged, and debris could be seen everywhere. The guys in front of her had a strong smell of blood on them. It wasn't hard to tell that there was a war here. She just didn't know if it was a local war or a national one. Thea took out the light ring to contact Caitlin. Only then did she realize a serious problem. The light ring couldn't be used in this parallel universe. Without the yellow light to charge and transmit information, the light ring was a dead object. She scratched her head. She could only ask the passers-by in front of her. "Is this the United States?" The few of them remained silent. "Let me change the question. What year is it?" They suddenly looked nervous. "By the way, do you have a superhero here?" "Superman?" Thea realized that before she could finish her sentence, these people had turned around and ran away. This exhausted her patience. She spread her fingers, and a guy who seemed to be the leader of the group was caught by her magician's hand. "Can't I talk to you nicely and answer my question? Why do you have such a big reaction when I mention Superman?" Thea hovered in the air and looked down at the downtrodden man. The man's neck was grabbed by the hand of magic, and his limbs were trembling. He was obviously scared to death, but he still chose to keep silent. Thea, who had not used brainwashing for a long time, could only go back to her old profession. Now that she had become a god, the spell she was very familiar with was even more powerful. He tapped the man's forehead with his finger, and a large cluster of memories was quickly read. Thea frowned halfway through. There was something wrong with this world. At first, when she saw them gnashing their teeth at the mention of Superman, Thea thought that this was a superhuman world. However, after reading some of the memories, she knew that she had guessed wrong. The Superman here was still a good person, but he was invaded by the Apocalypse Star and was captured. Now, he had been transformed into the Apocalypse Devil Superman and was no longer the superhero he used to be. On the contrary, he had caused great damage to Earth. The Wasteland Wolf. The name of the Apocalypse Star's commander was well known in this world. Even these ordinary people who were far away from the war knew this name because he was the conqueror of Earth. Countless superheroes fell at his feet, and now humans could only crawl at his feet and live on his grace. The man knew very little. He only knew that Superman was captured. As for Batman, he had heard of him, but he had no idea whether this person was alive or dead. With too little information, he could not analyze anything. Thea let the man go. The man quickly recovered from his dazed state. As if he had seen a ghost, he threw down the energy gun and stumbled into the distance. It's a pity that the Croydon compass is still in Barry's hands. "Can you use the current methods to track Barry?" she asked Psyche. Psyche did not know that he had awakened a superpower. His face was pale at the moment, but when he thought of his good friend's whereabouts, he forced himself to be alert. He turned on the tablet and tried to connect. Soon, he shook his head and said with a little frustration, "I can't connect to the network here. Their code is different from ours." How troublesome. Thea felt a little sad about reverse lightning. Everything was different in a new environment, and she had to adapt again. Fortunately, she was not reverse lightning who had lost all her speed. Finding someone was not a problem for her. Divination was an important subject in both ancient and modern magic. Even if she had become a god, her attainments in divination were not as good as Madame Changju's. However, this did not mean that she did not know how to do it. It was just that she was not good at it. Under Saika's confused gaze, she quickly drew a magic circle. After thinking for a while, she made a small figure of Barry out of the mud. With her attainments in magic, she did not need to add any hair or blood. She only needed to imitate Barry's spiritual characteristics. This nameless spell, which was a combination of divination and witchcraft, was instantly activated. Then, the small figure spun around a few times and finally pointed firmly to the south. She picked up the small figure and flew Saika to the south. Along the way, it was a tragic sight. After killing 3 batches of apocalypse demons in a row, Thea had to cast a high-level invisibility spell on the 2 of them. These apocalypse demons were quite advanced in technology. They could see through ordinary invisibility spells. What happened to this world? Was it invaded by aliens? Initially, Saika was scared out of his wits as he flew in the air. However, perhaps he was brave, or perhaps the tragic situation on the ground attracted his attention. When the 2 of them flew past the 9th human settlement that was destroyed by the apocalypse demons, the young mistress took out her whip and killed all the soldiers. After saving a dozen survivors, he finally could not help but ask Thea, "Everything is possible in a parallel world. I can only help where I can. First, find Barry. Believe me, I will make these bastards pay the price." The young mistress said firmly. Now that she was also a member of the new god tribe, it was her duty to attack the Apocalypse Star. It was just a Great Plains wolf. She could easily mobilize her magic army and crush him. Even the Heavenly Father might personally make a move. He had a deep-seated hatred for the Great Plains wolf for killing his wife. However, if the Heavenly Father made a move, the scale of the war would instantly expand. It was hard to say whether it was a blessing or a curse for the survivors of this planet. There's a reaction. Barry should be in this city. Thea finally got close to Barry according to the small figure's instructions. However, she slowed down. When she saw the signs by the roadside, she was still a little stunned. Chapter 657. When Saika saw her stop halfway through her sentence, he curiously followed her gaze. His eyesight was far inferior to the young lady's, but the awakening of his superpower had greatly improved his physical fitness. After squinting his eyes for a long time, he finally understood why Thea stopped talking. A rusty iron plate covered with blood and bullet holes was lying on the side of the road with the words 15 kilometers away from Star City written on it. Thinking that this world also had Superman and Star City, then a lot of things must also exist, he consciously shut his mouth. If he could think of something, the young lady would naturally be more clear about it. She also had this plate in her original world. The style of the plate and the font were exactly the same, making Thea feel that she had returned to her hometown. She laughed at herself and shook her head gently to get rid of this thought. This could not be her home was not here. It was just that the prosperous Star City in her impression overlapped with the dead city in front of her. She still felt a kind of anger that reached the depths of her soul. How many acquaintances of Star City were still alive in this world? Although those people theoretically had nothing to do with her, when she thought of Moira, Oliver, and even herself lying in a pool of blood here, she still could not be indifferent. Although she could not control her anger to the extent that she could use it casually, it was still a small achievement. Countless light red cyclones lingered around her body. Thea hurriedly withdrew her emotions, but a thought still formed in her mind. The wasteland wolves must die. The place that should be a holiday square in her impression was now full of corpses. There were apocalyptic demons, but more ordinary citizens. No matter how rich or poor they were before, they were a group of pitiful humans in front of the enemy. The streets and alleys were full of chaos and depression. The city had been completely abandoned. Without using her supervision, she could sense that there were less than 100 survivors in the entire city. Psyche Ramon, do you regret coming here? At this time, Psyche was more agitated than she was. His lips were trembling. The tragic scene in front of him was really too different from his original idea. He usually only needed to hide behind the screen and watch Barry beat down the enemy. He did not experience any danger at all. He even had the leisure to give the enemy nicknames. This was too much of a joke in Thea's opinion. Now, facing the bloody situation, his beliefs were completely shaken. Superheroes not only bore the burden of glory, but also the burden in their hearts. Did he regret it? To be honest, Psyche didn't have as strong a conviction as Barry. He joined the Lightning Squad because he wanted to display his personal worth and not because he wanted to help others. This guy's neutral attribute was far greater than his righteous attribute. The reason he was able to get to where he was today was because of friendship. I have no regrets. With a bitter face to show that he is strong, Thea can only shake her head and sigh. This kid still has a long way to go before he becomes a superhero. She takes out the little man and continues to track Barry. The good news was that Barry didn't move from his position. The bad news was that he was hiding in an underground building. The building that was covered with a layer of lead seriously blocked her view. Psyche gripped his gun tightly and walked forward cautiously. Thea sensed that something was wrong and reached out to stop him. Immediately after, a sharp arrow pierced the ground 2 steps in front of his feet. Wow! Even though the other party didn't use any underhanded means and was clearly warning him, Psyche was still taken aback. This was the first time he had come so close to death. He quickly turned his head to look at Missy. He had a superhero that could move mountains and seas by his side. He wasn't afraid. However, his heart sank when he saw Thea staring at the man in black who jumped out from the opposite wall. The other party had his bow and arrow aimed at the two of them. He didn't know why Missy was in a daze. Psyche quickly raised his gun. It didn't matter if it was useful or not. This was the only thing he could rely on. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, his good brother Barry came out. Psyche never felt that the yellow lightning was so familiar. That guy. He pointed at the man in black and asked Barry. Barry waved his hand to signal him to stop talking. Barry, who are they? The man in black's voice was old and tired. However, his hand was steady and the arrow was aimed at the two of them. The Flash was a little embarrassed as he pointed at Psyche. This is my friend Psyche Ramon. We are together with Caitlin. As for this, he looked at Thea and didn't know what to say. I am Thea Quinn from another parallel universe. Hello, Robert Quinn. It would be a lie to say that Missy was emotionally stable. After all, she was still a little dazed when she saw a relative who had died 8 years ago standing in front of her. Fortunately, she was mentally prepared and quickly accepted the fact that the old man in front of her had nothing to do with her. The man in black was naturally old Robert of this world. He had met Barry and Caitlin before, and he had doubtfully learned about the parallel universe. Now that he had met his daughter from another universe, his emotions were no longer as calm as they were before. His voice trembled as he tried to pull the bowstring. Do you have any evidence? Thea didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What evidence could she take out? They were from 2 different universes. Their experiences were definitely different. Hey, trust me. She is indeed Robert Quinn's daughter in our universe. She is not an enemy. Little Flash quickly came to smooth things over. Thanks to his gentle aura and sunny image, old Robert put down his bow and arrow. A daughter from a parallel universe? Ridiculous. Old Robert walked out slowly. Thea couldn't help but give him a sidelong glance. Green robe, black eye patch, white beard, bow and arrow on his back. This was Green Arrow's outfit. As if sensing her confusion, Little Flash quickly explained for her. In this universe, Oliver died in a shipwreck. The current Green Arrow is old Robert. Wow! Psyche was just about to exclaim when Flash covered his mouth. It was best to just brush this matter aside and pretend that they didn't hear anything. Don't worry about me. This isn't my universe. Thea emphasized again. It was both for them and for herself. This isn't the place to talk. Let's go to our place. Old Robert kept looking at Thea's appearance. Although he could still see the outline of her face, the details were 100 times more exquisite than Thea's in this universe. Even though he was already past the age of appreciating beautiful women, he still felt that this Thea was unbelievably beautiful. She's not my daughter. When he saw Thea rise into the air without any equipment, this thought became even stronger. With little Flash carrying Psyche, the four of them moved quickly. In an abandoned house, a hidden door opened and they went underground. The underground space wasn't big. There were only a few resting rooms. Food and medicine were piled up messily on the ground. There was also a faint smell of blood and chemicals in the air. Chapter 658. Psyche, Thea. Without the help of the lantern ring, Caitlin could control the ice to glide through the air, but it wasn't as fast. She was waiting anxiously in the room. Seeing that they were safe, she hurriedly hugged them both. It seemed that their voices were a little loud. Two people walked out of the room, a man and a woman. The man was in his 50s and was very thin. He had a serious expression and wore black-rimmed glasses. The woman was a little chubby and looked like she was in her 20s. The woman seemed to be very concerned about her image. Even if she was forced to hide in the basement, she still did her best to tidy herself up. Psyche, who was hugging Caitlin, saw them from the corner of his eyes. He was shocked and hurriedly went to grab his weapon. Psyche, don't be rash. He's not the person you remember. Caitlin hurriedly pulled Psyche back. The commotion attracted the attention of Thea and old Robert, who looked gloomy, on the other side. Even Thea was a little surprised. Harrison Wales? Or reverse lightning? Grey air swirled around his palm and he was ready to cast a super large area deceleration spell. No, Thea. He's not the person you remember. He's the Harrison of this time and space. Little Lightning's expression was very bad, but he still stopped Thea. The young mistress looked carefully. There was indeed no divine speed reaction in his body. He didn't even have normal energy, let alone divine speed. He was just an ordinary person. Everyone's here. Let me introduce you. Little Lightning glanced at Caitlin. The current Caitlin was more human than the Frost Killer in the original time and space, but that was only for people who were familiar with her. He could only take on the task of introducing them. This is Psyche Ramone, my good brother. This is Thea Quinn, a superhero in our world. Little Lightning glanced at old Robert's expression and added, she's the daughter of the president of our world. The president of our world is Ms. Moira Quinn. Little Flash racked his brains and tried to explain with simple and plain words. Fortunately, the people in the room were smart enough to understand. Only old Robert murmured, Moira. Then, Barry introduced the people in the current space-time. First, it was the white-haired old Robert who took off his hood. Uncle Robert Quinn. In this space-time, he is the Green Arrow. The father and daughter over there are Dr. Harrison Wales and his daughter, Jessie Wales. Thea rubbed her forehead. To be honest, she didn't like this world. Everything here was contrary to her inherent values. The only thing she could do was to mobilize an army to cut down the wasteland wolves, then chop them up and feed them to the dogs. However, in such a large-scale battle, it was impossible not to harm the innocent. This was also the reason why she couldn't make up her mind. Seeing that Barry still wanted to talk about the current situation, she raised her hand and interrupted the conversation. Barry, Caitlin, where is Reverse Lightning? If you are done with your tracking, I will bring you back. You shouldn't be too involved with the parallel space-time. At the mention of Reverse Lightning, Barry glanced at Caitlin. He seemed to be in low spirits. Of course, ever since Sia saw him 10 minutes ago, he had been in low spirits. The world was full of despair. The decadence in the air and the rivers on the ground made him very unhappy. I saw it with my own eyes. Reverse Lightning was killed by another extreme speed. The superhero of this space-time called that person Extreme Speed. Although he had avenged his mother, Barry wasn't happy at all. Instead, he was filled with deep sadness. especially when he thought of reverse lightning dying in front of him. The calmness and relief on his face before he died made him feel uncomfortable. Reverse lightning was dead. Thea glanced at Caitlin. Caitlin nodded lightly to confirm the information. I can't go back. Extreme Speed's goal is to kill all the Extreme Speed. He is my enemy. I have to kill him here. Barry's answer was very similar to a superhero's. That was to kill whoever he saw. Thea felt that he was most likely doing the same. He didn't feel bad if someone else destroyed him. Instead of allowing Extreme Speed to peep around and cause trouble, it was better to kill him on this earth. But my speed is far inferior to his. Extreme Speed has absorbed the power of Extreme Speed from several parallel spacetime Extreme Speed. Now that he has obtained Reverse Lightning's part, he has far surpassed me. Barry said, a little depressed. Thea thought for a while. That's easy. We can. Before she could finish, a loud bang was heard. Old Robert slammed the table fiercely and looked at Thea fiercely. You are not my daughter. My daughter will not ignore the tragedy in front of her to discuss how to deal with Extreme Speed. You are just a stranger who looks like her. Thea took a deep breath. She was extremely upset. Waves of aura overflowed from her body. The surrounding temperature dropped rapidly. The liquid in the container began to tremble slightly. The air seemed to have solidified. She was really wronged. Everything had to be done one by one. What was wrong with dealing with Extreme Speed first? She had no responsibility or obligation to this place. Why did Robert have to impose his will on her? I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. You're not my father either. He's kind and considerate of others. You just look like him. You're not him at all. The two of them were at loggerheads. Neither of them was willing to admit defeat. Don't fight. We can discuss. We don't have to deal with Extreme Speed. Little Flash saw that they were at daggers drawn because of him and hurriedly came out to smooth things over. Barry, you don't understand. I can feel that this old man is hostile to me. This hostility has been there since we met. Thea's understanding of emotions was unparalleled. Now that she was serious, she immediately noticed the abnormality. Barry listened and immediately stood beside Thea. If the other party was hostile, then there was nothing to talk about. He was ruthlessly played by Reverse Lightning. At this moment, Barry was weak and sensitive. He hated being lied to the most. Caitlin was even more so. Her palms were already filled with frost. She was ready to start a massacre here. The sudden change in the situation made Harrison and his daughter, who had been watching the show, a little confused. Are you guys so hot-tempered? Ignoring his weak body, he stood in front of them and signaled for them to stop. My feelings can't be wrong, Mr. Robert Quinn. Thea really wanted to understand where this hatred came from. Could it be that he knew that she was Old Ma's daughter in this world? The probability was not small. She could handle it calmly in the original timeline, but it was hard to say in this timeline. Old Robert hesitated for a long time. It was only when Harrison desperately signaled him with his eyes that he reluctantly said, "You are not my daughter at all. I noticed at first glance. You look exactly like the person who killed my daughter." Chapter 659. Thea heaved a sigh of relief when she heard that it was not an illegitimate daughter. As long as it was not an illegitimate daughter, she was confident that she could solve any problem. However, Old Robert's words confused her. What did he mean? Someone who looked like her killed the Thea of this time and space. Was it someone from the Wasteland Wolves? The first thing that came to her mind was a spell. Her image must have been transmitted to the Apocalypse Star. Did the other party use a spell to kill someone using her appearance? This was the only answer that Thea could think of. Old Robert stared at Thea with bright eyes, not letting go of even the slightest change in her. He shook his head with certainty. It was a year before the Wasteland Wolves came to Earth. That woman looked exactly like you. Thea's friends looked at each other. Barry understood. It should be someone from the parallel universe. Now that there are two parallel universes, it is normal to have one more. This answer could be deduced by anyone with a normal IQ. This was also the reason why old Robert did not make a move. He nodded. You are right. There is a third parallel universe. However, can Thea of that universe be as beautiful as her? That Thea can fly, release a kind of energy shockwave, hold a long sword, and have the same hairstyle as her. Oh. Old Robert spoke with certainty. With so much evidence, Barry Sisko was a little hesitant. It was really difficult to have such a beautiful face. If Sia's current appearance was placed in the ancient times, she would be able to get tens of thousands of rough men to fight for her without using magic. Caitlin was also a little suspicious. Thea's secret power was not small. She was a part of it. Could it be that she was the one who killed the people? She began to secretly gather energy in her hands. If she failed, she would first freeze Barry's legs. Thea herself found it unbelievable. However, she insisted that it was some kind of illusion that bewitched these ordinary people. With a flick of her finger, a human figure as tall as her appeared beside her. To increase the recognition, she even made the illusion wear a big quilt and a holy sword. Is it this image? Robert shook his head. She then created an image wearing a long robe and holding a soft whip. If the Apocalypse Star used her image to do bad things, this image was the most likely. That's what it looks like. Robert Sr. continued to shake his head, indicating no. This time, they realized that there was a problem. What did that person look like? Barry asked the question that was on everyone's minds. Old Robert began to describe with an ugly expression. She looks exactly the same as you. You both have blonde hair, but the color of your eyes is different. That woman has amber eyes. But his temperament was very cold, and he looked at us without any emotion, as if he was looking at ants. Looking at the image of Thea holding a holy sword, he had a look of disgust on his face. Her armor is similar to this one, but her armor is black. The sword in her hand is so black that it seems to be able to absorb light. There are blood-red inscriptions on the sword. I saw her plunge her sword into Thea's chest with my own eyes. After that, the sword emitted a thick red light. After that, her armor seemed to have absorbed Thea's blood, and there were many bright red lines on it. After that, the woman looked at me coldly and turned to leave. The room was silent. Everyone was a little confused, including Barry and Saika, who had known Thea for many years. They were all confused because Thea had always been like a cloud of fog. No one could tell what her specific ability was. How did she obtain her power? No one knew. Could it be that she obtained her power by slaughtering her parallel selves? I'm so angry. This was utter nonsense. There can't be anyone like me. Of course, Thea saw their confused expressions. If I'm not wrong, this woman should be a dark Thea. She's not me, and I'm not her. Thea was too lazy to explain the uniqueness of the goddess of wealth and trade to them. There might be a few Thea Quinn, but there was only one goddess of wealth and trade. Since we've come to this point, I'll tell you the truth. This earth will not be ignored. The Wasteland Wolf and I are both members of the new god race. He represents the evil side, and I represent the righteous side. My army can head to this universe at any time. There's only one Great Plains wolf, and there's only one me. Shocked by her resolute words, everyone's expressions became better. Of course, this might be because they heard that there were reinforcements. Thea had thought a lot. She didn't expect to receive such news when she came to look for Barry. There was a dark Thea Quinn in the multiverse. According to Robert's description, her weapon was similar to a holy sword. There was no possibility of a new god. All the new gods in the universe were in the new Creation Star and Revelation Star. Every time a new god was born, they would be recruited. However, the path to becoming stronger in this multiverse was not limited to the new gods. Not to mention others, once Zeus returned to his main body, he would be able to beat up the new gods apart from Uncle Da. Even existences like the 3 palace demons could fight Uncle Da head-on. It was hard to guess what the dark Thea had up her sleeves. Thea could only be sure of one thing. She didn't have the advantage of foresight. There were 52 parallel universes. It was impossible for 52 transmigrators to fall from 52 parallel universes, right? There was only one transmigrator who fused with her. The other party must have come this far without knowing anything about the world. Amazing. As expected, the dark state was 5 times stronger. She had spent so much effort to reach her current level. She was probably 100 times more hardworking than she was. In order to strengthen their impression, Thea took out the holy sword. Everyone was bathed in the warm fragrance of the holy sword. See, this is my sword. I don't know if there are any stories about King Arthur in your world, but this is the legendary sword of the lake. It turned out that this world wasn't much different from their original time and space. There was Christmas and King Arthur. Such a positive atmosphere couldn't be faked. Robert finally let down his guard. Thea asked about Robert's family in this time and space. After listening to his story, she was a little sad. Oliver didn't have any talent and died in a shipwreck. Old Luo went through a lot of hardships and learned a lot of skills before returning to Star City. The first one to bear the brunt was Malcolm. The two friends started a battle of life and death. In the final stage, Moira blocked Malcolm's arrow, and old Marco was shot to death by old Luo. Lying in her husband's arms, Moira redeemed herself and closed her eyes with a smile. Thea here didn't have the help of a transmigrator. It was still version 1.0. She skipped school and drank too much. Old Luo took care of his daughter. He managed the company during the day and fought criminals at night. After 2 years, he finally changed Thea's bad habits. Unfortunately, he was stabbed to death by the Dark Thea from another world. Chapter 660. After the sadness, old Robert buried his beloved daughter and left Quinn's old house where his wife and daughter were in eternal rest. He guarded Star City alone for 2 years until the wasteland wolf arrived on Earth. Great. The young mistress was speechless. Her acquaintances from that space-time were all dead here, one after another. Other than you, are there any other superheroes in this world? Are they? Saika couldn't help but ask. When this question was brought up, everyone in this time and space was in low spirits. Seeing that the 2 old men were unwilling to answer, Dr. Harrison's daughter, Thea, looked a little chubby. Jessie Wales answered, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman are our strongest heroes here. Oh, you have Wonder Woman here too? Thea's curiosity was instantly piqued. Jessie looked at her carefully. The wasteland wolf used a device to control the humans of the world. Batman sacrificed himself to blow up the enemy's command tower and control center, saving everyone. However, the price was still too high for humans to bear. Superman was captured, Batman sacrificed himself, and I heard that Wonder Woman was killed by the wasteland wolf's sneak attack. The superheroes that protected the human world are no longer here. Whoosh. The temperature in the room had already returned to normal, but now it was visible to the naked eye that the temperature in the room had dropped by a lot. Thea asked in disbelief, "What's the name of your Wonder Woman here?" Jessie looked at his father and then at old Robert. The 3 of them shook their heads to show that they didn't know. Is it like this? Thea transformed into Diana, dressed in the same beginner god costume. Jessie was just about to nod when Barry quickly ran to Missy's side to comfort her. Your wife is living well at home. This has nothing to do with you, right? Even though Thea understood this, she still felt unhappy. Extremely unhappy. That bastard wasteland wolf, he actually killed Diana in this time and space. If I don't chop him into pieces, I won't be able to vent the hatred in my heart. He took a few deep breaths and tried his best to clear his mind before continuing to ask, then, who is your current superhero leader? Jessie didn't know the answer to this question. Old Luo said tiredly, it's still Batman. It's just that the current Batman is his father, an old man who's even older than me. For his son, he put on his armor again. Sigh. Thea was actually a little sad to hear about Batman's death. Although he didn't have superpowers, from any point of view, Batman was enough to be called a great superhero. As a human, he did the best he could. Superman had been captured and turned into an enemy. Diana and Batman had both died in battle. No wonder the world was so miserable. Are there no other heroes other than Batman? Thea did not expect much from old Batman. His son could cheat, but he himself might not have the ability. Moreover, According to old Luo, old Batman was older than him. Wasn't he almost 70 years old? Jessie Fatter, this young lady whose original name was Jessie Wales, when she introduced herself, she said that her friends called her Jessie. Quick guessed. The young lady didn't see where she was, so perhaps it was more appropriate to call her Fatter. Of course, this Fatter was Sia's inner respect for her. This young lady wasn't too fat, just that her face was big, and her body was very well proportioned, with an extra layer of meat compared to ordinary people. The lady's face glowed as if she had mentioned her idol. She said excitedly, Hawkgirl. Hawkgirl is now the representative of the superheroes in our world. After the fat lady finished speaking, she glanced at Thea and Barry. She was a little surprised when she found that they were normal. Hawkgirl doesn't exist in your world. Barry directly said that he had never heard of it. Thea scratched her head. Horus was killed by her, so Hawkman and Hawkgirl should no longer exist. However, this was in her world and her timeline. The fusion of new gods was unique, but the old gods, especially the gods of faith, had different laws. There might be gods with the same name and divine title. Therefore, it was not surprising that there was a Hawkgirl in this time and space. However, Hawkgirl was actually the strongest superheroes in this world. This was simply a tragedy. That poor little bird that only knew how to swing a hammer. Thea felt that she could beat her when she was still skateboarding. Now that such a character was carrying the burden, it was no wonder that this world was filled with despair. Jessie also introduced a few human superpowers who resisted the tyranny of the Wasteland Wolf. There was Sandman, Iron Captain, Atom Smasher, Dr. Light. They were all half-black and half-white characters. The main reason they rose up in revolt was that the Wasteland Wolf did not give them a way out. The situation was not optimistic. If they wanted to rely solely on these heroes of Earth to save this world that Thea named Earth 2 in her heart, unless a miracle happened. She felt that she was the representative of this miracle. Barry, here you go. She suddenly remembered the USB flash drive that Reverse Lightning had given her. Although he was dead, she should still let Barry take a look. The coding of this Earth was slightly different from that of their original Earth. Fortunately, Dr. Harrison was still an amazing scientist. He fiddled with it for a while and read the information of their original Earth. It was a magical feeling to see someone who looked exactly like her talking on the screen. Barry was only left with shock. He did not expect Reverse Lightning to leave this video behind. Other things aside, at least his father could be cleared of his crimes and stand in the light of day again. Although Thea had secretly pushed for his father to be released for medical treatment, Barry was still very excited to be cleared of all his crimes. Psyker did not know how to persuade his good brother. The few of them had complicated feelings towards Reverse Lightning. They had trusted him so much before, but he had betrayed them and now he was dead. However, when they looked back, they did not know what to do. Do you want me to send you back to deal with your father's matter first? Thea felt that Barry's condition was very bad. He would not be able to provide much help in the upcoming army-level battle. However, just as she finished speaking, a low voice sounded around them. He's not going anywhere. Become my speed. A figure mixed with blue lightning approached quickly. The air was compressed violently as it carried irresistible kinetic energy. The enemy's target was Barry. Was this extreme speed? His speed was so fast that even Thea could not keep up with his movements. This guy's speed surpassed all the people and gods she had ever seen. Even Barry, the son of extreme speed, was not his opponent. However, attacking the enemy's weakness and pulling the opponent down to your level before defeating him was the value of magic. Time stop. Thea crushed the gem she carried with her and released a stored time stop. In the relative time stop, the difference between extreme speed and Barry could be seen. Barry's movements were very stiff. He could barely maintain a running movement. However, extreme speed was able to maintain a relatively high-speed movement. The difference between the two of them seemed to be a few levels. Sensing his own abnormality, extreme speed, who was wearing a black leather suit, turned his head to look at Thea. What are you looking at? Ever since she came to this world, she had never been in a good mood. A truck full of acquaintances had died and there was also a dark Thea causing trouble in the multiverse. No matter how she thought about it, she could not be happy. Now that there was a guy who was not afraid of death looking for a beating, she would send him on his way. Slap. She raised her soft whip and used the silver fire that was as bright as the stars. The tip of the whip brought out a little bit of meteors that danced around. Now, her silver fire was no longer a pure magic fire. Referring to the fire that she got from Poseidon, she added the fire of the water into the magic fire. The small flame collected by the goddess of the ocean, Amphitrite, spent a long time in the deepest part of the ocean and gradually accumulated it bit by bit. Chapter 661. Thea didn't understand the principle of fire in water. She could only explain it according to the indescribable theory of yin and yang conversion. Poseidon didn't like fire, even if the fire was produced in the sea. Thea, on the other hand, felt that it was a treasure. It could change from one extreme to another, which was very valuable for research. The light blue flames dancing in the sky were the result of her preliminary research. Originally, the silver flames could only burn things with energy. Now, the new flames could burn everything, and the water in the target's body could increase the intensity of the flames. Amidst the overflowing flames, there were also countless whip shadows. The wind pressure that was originally caused by the extreme speed of the whip changed, and the air became extremely hot and unbearable. The paper on the table began to emit crisp sounds, accompanied by fine smoke that ignited. Extreme Speed looked at the flames in his sight. The few people in the room were still in a state of stillness. The flames reflected their red faces. His intuition told him that he couldn't take it head-on. Even if he was in the range of time stop, he could still maintain a relatively high speed. With his agile figure and still swift speed, he was confident that he could get rid of Thea, and then reap the harvest of the extreme speed from another time and space. However, he underestimated Thea, or rather, he believed too much in what he saw with his eyes. Confusion, this was the characteristic of her divine power that Thea had discovered long ago. She mixed a lot of illusions in the air. That day, even Apollo was fooled by her, let alone the extreme speed of a mortal. After hitting 3 flames in the air, Extreme Speed realized that something was wrong. The initial temperature of the flames was not high, but there was a tendency to burn more and more. Whether it was slapping or wind pressure, it was ineffective against the flames. Instead, with his movements, the flames showed signs of expanding. What the hell? In the time that Extreme Speed was stunned, Thea's whip was already in front of him. This guy had 10 times more combat experience than Barry. He turned around and ran for more than 10 miles in one breath. Thea's magic range was not so large, and Extreme Speed soon found that he had recovered his original speed. Unfortunately, the flames on his body showed no signs of extinguishing. Extreme Speed's eyes changed slightly, and his body shook violently. A blue light flashed, and he ran directly through the thick wall at high speed. Amazing. Thea couldn't help but sigh. This guy had made the already buggy lightning speed even more buggy. Using its own vibration characteristics, it achieved a kind of atomic resonance with the wall, and then passed through it. His own flames definitely couldn't follow the vibrations, so he left them on the wall. The principle behind this move wasn't difficult, but finding the frequency of the wall's vibrations and making his body resonate with it required a lot of time and experimentation. Thea put away her time stop and teleported them out of the basement. The cramped environment restricted the other party, but it also restricted her. "Caitlin," she shouted. Frost Killer, who could be considered to have been trained for a long time, immediately activated a large spell around them. The heat within a radius of 100 meters was completely absorbed, and the temperature plummeted. This move was both offensive and defensive. It had been effective against reverse lightning back then, and it would be effective against Extreme Speed today as well. Caitlin had just unleashed her ultimate move when she was already in front of him from miles away. As soon as he entered the range of 100 meters, Extreme Speed's body began to lose heat rapidly, which greatly reduced his speed. Unwilling to give up, he once again widened the distance and rushed over from another angle. The result was disappointing. Caitlin's move was actually quite stupid, but he really didn't have a good way to break it. The freezing effect on extreme speed was too fatal. Even if he was the fastest in the world, he couldn't break through in a short time. The flash. Your speed is mine. After a few consecutive attempts, extreme speed knew that he would most likely return empty-handed today. His mouth was useless, but he still wanted to use a wave of words. Barry was just about to reply when Thea stopped him. Physics. Magic can't be resisted like that. 5 fingers spread out, aiming at extreme speed from afar, Thea softly spat out a syllable. Internal explosion. So what if extreme speed could shake off his flames? Magic was controlled by spiritual power, and it had directional properties. Temporarily changing the atomic structure could shake off the magic, but unless he maintained the resonance frequency of the wall forever, once he returned to his original state, the magic would entangle him like gangrene attached to the bone. Some wizards' curses could last for thousands of years with the bloodline. Now that Thea had hurriedly cast the spell, it didn't need to last that long, but it could still last for dozens of minutes. If extreme speed disappeared without a trace, his spiritual power wouldn't be able to detect it, and there would be nothing he could do. But extreme speed stopped and wanted to use his mouth to escape. How could Lady Caitlin let him run away after showing off? Relying on the connection of spiritual power, Thea directly transformed the contaminated water in extreme speed's body. A small ball of fire was born in his body, and then it was directly detonated by Thea. Extreme speed could also be injured, and his internal organs were not much stronger than ordinary people. Extreme speed was shocked when he felt the abnormality in his chest and lungs. He didn't have time to think carefully and turned around to run. In less than 1,000th of a second, an explosion occurred in his body. Although he had run more than 10 miles away, a bloody hole was blown out from his liver to his kidney to his entire abdomen. The explosion happened too suddenly and too strangely. Extreme speed was not prepared at all, and he started to bleed profusely. He could no longer maintain his high speed and stumbled to the side of the road, vomiting mouthfuls of blood. His chest and abdomen were badly mutilated, and his special anti-wear suit was blown open. Blood flowed freely from the wound, and the whole ground was completely dyed red. Kill him quickly. He's an accomplice of the Great Plains Wolves. Dr. Harrison Wales shouted. When Barry was still thinking about whether to kill him or not, Thea nimbly flashed a few times and rushed up. Taking advantage of his weakness to kill him, this guy would definitely be a disaster if he was left alive. While she was rushing, the soft whip in her hand did not stop. A large amount of flame was attached to the tip of the whip. As long as extreme speed was entangled, he would definitely be burned into ashes. Bang! The distance between the two was quickly shortened. Thea's speed was indeed not as fast as extreme speed, but when one of them stood still and the other ran, it was not even 1/10 of a second. She raised her arm slightly, and the soft whip rolled towards extreme speed, who had no resistance. Her movements were considered fast in the eyes of ordinary people, but in the eyes of extreme speed, it was still very slow. He knew that he had to dodge, but unfortunately, his injuries were too severe. With this level of injury, even if he sped up the cell healing, it would still take him more than half a day to recover. He watched as the soft whip wrapped in flames drew a beautiful arc in the air and rolled towards his neck. His limbs were weak, and he barely took half a step back. At the critical moment, bang, there was an explosion, and a portal rose up on his left. 3 people jumped out of the portal. The white-haired woman in the lead raised her hand and launched a fierce ice blast without thinking. The tip of the whip was blocked by her for a moment, and Thea could only shake her wrist to retrieve the soft whip. The remaining 2 people hurriedly pulled her back. Chapter 662. F***CK. Thea looked at these troublemakers and couldn't help but curse. The woman who blocked her attack first had white hair and black eyeshadow and was wearing a leather jacket. The man behind her had fire in his eyes, hair, and hands. The other was short and wore a long trench coat and sunglasses. Haha. I'm dying of laughter. Psycha, Caitlin, look at your image in this world. Here, extreme speed is a bad guy. Psycha, Caitlin, and Ronnie are also bad guys. Thea held her stomach and laughed. Extreme speed was the biggest threat. These guys looked scary, but she didn't take them seriously. With a whoosh, little Flash finally came to her side. Looking at the familiar strangers in front of him, he was also a little confused. Extreme Speed didn't have time to talk nonsense with Miss. His hands moved quickly and wrapped around his wound. Only then did he stand up shakily and looked at Thea with hazy eyes. "What are you looking at? You guys are living so happily. You must have surrendered to the wasteland wolf, right? You even betrayed the world that gave birth to you. How dare you stand in front of me, a bunch of scum?" Hearing her words, the expressions of the people opposite her were different. Extreme Speed's face was covered so tightly that she couldn't see their expressions. She only heard him snort in disdain. The evil version of Firestorm chose to ignore him. Psycha and Caitlin were a little unnatural, but they quickly recovered. "Be careful, this woman is very powerful. She seems to be a new god like the wasteland wolf," Extreme Speed whispered to the few of them. In the past, he didn't even care about these useless people. But now that he was seriously injured, he had to unite them. "Yo, looks like you have been to many universes. You are indeed knowledgeable. You even know about new gods. Barry, you go and deal with." "Barry, be careful." Thea was just about to let Barry deal with the seriously injured Extreme Speed when she saw a blood-red blade appear out of thin air and stab towards Barry's back. Even though he was warned, Barry's lack of experience was exposed. He actually made a move to turn around. He quickly realized that something was wrong, but it was too late to dodge. Thea cursed under her breath and threw out a flame blast. At the same time, Barry also unleashed his potential and moved 2 steps to the left. Puff! With a muffled sound, a huge sword more than a meter long pierced through Barry from the back. Facing Thea's attack, the ambusher chose to retreat. He pulled out his great sword and Barry's blood flowed out. Thea hurriedly used greater healing on him and instantly checked his condition. The son of the god of speed had avoided a vital point at the critical moment. Although he was seriously injured, he was still worth saving. "Caitlin, take them away first." Thea tossed Barry to the back and stared at the enemies that suddenly appeared. He wore a strangely shaped and majestic horned helmet. His eyes were scarlet and his face was covered in scars. He wore a full-body armor that was as black as ink on his body that was more than 2 meters tall. The most eye-catching thing about him was that his belt was decorated with the head of a roaring demon. "Great Plains Wolf, you bastard, how dare you use your doppelganger to face me?" Thea sneered. She looked at the new deity who was surrounded by a faint red aura. He held a great sword in his left hand and a great axe in his right. The new deity looked at her for a while. "The goddess of trade. I've heard about you from Gracious. You don't know your limits. I've seen the evil that shrouded the multiverse. I've seen those great powers. For someone of your level, I only need my doppelganger to deal with you." Huh. She didn't know what he was really capable of, but this guy's bragging skills made her feel ashamed. After all, he was Khan Yoja's younger brother and Darkseid's uncle. Although he was weak, he had met people who could crush Thea. "Cut the crap. You only know how to attack from behind. I'm going to avenge this universe, Batman, and Diana," Thea said as she put on the god's hush armor. She brandished her holy sword and attacked. Carrying a resplendent light, the sacred sword felt her anger, and the sword's aura surged like the sea. The Great Plains Wolf put away his long sword and held his great axe with both hands. Countless souls of the dead lingered around the weapon. His aura was not weak either, and he met the holy sword head-on. Boom! There was a loud explosion at the point where the two of them met. The road that originally belonged to Star City was shattered by the shockwave. Many abandoned cars on the road were crushed into dust by the huge force. The evil quartet retreated a few hundred meters. On the other side, Caitlin was also treating Barry while commanding a few ordinary people to retreat. Both of them were not satisfied with the exchange of blows. The Great Plains Wolf felt that Thea's strength was beyond his expectations. Heidi was even more unhappy. She didn't use her full strength. Instead, she was estimating the strength of her opponent's main body. The result was not too optimistic. The fact that her opponent's doppelganger could exchange a few blows with her spoke volumes. The god's hush armor crazily transformed the thunder magic and added it to the holy sword. The sword was originally 1 meter long, but now it was surrounded by dense lightning. It was even longer than before. The Great Plains wolf also began to accumulate power. A large number of souls of the dead were gathered on his great axe. There seemed to be wailing in the dark red light. These were the lives that died under his great axe. Now, they were used as sacrifices to increase his attack power. His great axe seemed to have endless power. Thea didn't take it head-on. Instead, she defended and attacked. She constantly used the magic on her holy sword to wear down the souls of the dead on his great axe. The Great Plains wolf saw through her intention and attacked even faster. The two of them exchanged 3 blows. When the Great Plains wolf blocked Thea's attack and the two of them passed by each other, he directly took out his greatsword and turned around to stab at her. Clang! His greatsword was knocked away. Thea was already prepared for his sneak attack. She blocked his sneak attack with her holy sword and took advantage of the momentum to cut his waist. Ha! The Great Plains wolf's lower abdomen shrank slightly. The evil ghost head that she thought was just a decoration suddenly came to life and bit at the holy sword. Although it was burned to ashes, it also bought time for the Great Plains wolf to pull away. Although it was only one move, the Great Plains wolf who had rich battle experience could see that Thea had been hiding her strength. She maintained a stalemate with the previous few moves just for this last move. She was really insidious. Thea was also a little regretful. She always thought that it was just a decoration. Who knew that this armor of hers had such a function? She wasted a good opportunity. Even if it was a clone, the main body would lose a part of its divine power if it was killed. She had been silently suppressing her strength in order to make the Great Plains wolf think that she was just SOSO. Now that her plan was ruined, she didn't regret it anymore and attacked with all her strength. "You bastards, come at me together." Facing Thea, who was going all out, the Great Plains wolf didn't have the pride he had when he was bragging. He hurriedly shouted to the ground. Just now, Thea's move was fast and urgent. If he didn't have some trump cards, he would have been cut in half. The evil 4 people on the ground looked at each other. "Didn't you have internal conflicts before? We thought that it was a one-on-one fight. You should have said so earlier if you could gang up on us." Chapter 663. Actually, the Great Plains wolf was in a dilemma. Who knew how a new god like Thea would appear in his territory? His main body had just returned to the Apocalypse Star, leaving behind only a clone to command the army. He also didn't want to expose himself and ask for help from the ants that he looked down on before. But facing Sia, who was at full power and whose strength, speed, and divine power suppressed him in all aspects, he really couldn't do anything. If he used his doppelganger against Sia's main body, he would basically die. Helplessly, he revealed his true strength. Ignoring the others, Extreme Speed, who had always been unruly, stared at the Great Plains wolf thoughtfully. Even if he was heavily injured, his speed should still be extremely fast. In the end, after hearing the order, the first one to rush up and attack Sia was Firestorm. Perhaps considering the pressure Thea would bring, Extreme Speed still joined in the attack. As for how much effort he put in, only the heavens knew. Firestorm wantonly unleashed raging flames, finally giving the Great Plains wolf some time to recover. The remaining Frost Killer and Evil Cisco, codenamed Echo, cursed silently. "Are you stupid? Why are you working so hard?" However, facing the Great Plains wolf's ferocious gaze, the two did not have Extreme Speed's confidence and did not dare to slack off. They braced themselves and surrounded Thea. "Since you want to die, I'll send you on your way." The young mistress was so angry that she laughed. Did they think they could win with numbers? There was a qualitative difference. She was not afraid and charged towards the 5 with her holy sword. Extreme Speed was slacking off and was instantly sensed by her. The Great Plains wolf was also conserving his strength. Frost Killer and Echo dealt with it reluctantly. The only one attacking fiercely was Evil Firestorm, who did not know what was going on. Thea secretly cursed him for being an idiot. Even if she was stronger than them, it was not that easy to take them down. The Great Plains Wolf and Extreme Speed were both very good at sneak attacks. She had to split more than half of her attention on the two of them. Firestorm's strength was also not to be underestimated. He was like a human-shaped nuclear reactor, constantly releasing a large amount of energy. Moreover, as the battle dragged on, the nuclear energy in Firestorm's body also intensified. The external manifestation was that the power of his attacks was increasing, and the frequency of his attacks was increasing. Firestorm's strength was one of the best even among the first-rate heroes. Thea did not have an overwhelming advantage. Coupled with the support of the Frost Killer and Echo, she fell into a stalemate. With a slash of her sword, she slashed apart the energy impact of the firestorm and dodged the sharp axe of the Wasteland Wolf. Flames and frost flew together, and shock waves and thrown lightning flew around her. Thea deeply felt the feelings of Hades when he was besieged by the Greek gods. These guys were not as good as her, but they relied on their numbers to beat her up. We have to break their formation. Thea switched her sword to her right hand, and began to chant an incantation with her left hand. Interrupt her. The Great Plains Wolf was a pure warrior, so it didn't understand what kind of spell it was, but it didn't need to think to know that it wasn't a good thing. Firestorm and Extreme Speed began to attack fiercely. Thea directly crushed a gem, activated a defensive spell, and focused on casting spells. She was preparing to cast a legendary spell. Even with her current strength, she still needed to make some necessary preparations with hand gestures. A faint golden barrier blocked their attacks. Firestorm and Extreme Speed clashed a few times. The barrier seemed thin, but it was abnormally sturdy. Extreme Speed shouted, "Echo, use your ability." Evil Psyker's eyes glowed with a faint blue light, and his hands released a high-frequency vibration wave. The barrier started to shake violently with the vibration wave, and finally shattered into powder like an eggshell. Extreme Speed's eyes showed a hint of mockery. Thea was also a little surprised. Psyker's ability was very strong. She was currently casting high-level spells, and the defensive spell just now was already the highest level spell that an ordinary wizard could cast. However, she was fearless. She had mastered the gem magic, and she had robbed Hades's treasury. She still had a few sacks of gems that stored such spells. Extreme Speed watched as Thea crushed another gem, and the same barrier as before reappeared. He signaled for Evil Psyker to continue. After shattering 3 of Thea's barriers, their expressions turned ugly. The other side's defensive barrier was endless, and Psyker was already exhausted to the point of exhaustion. High-frequency vibration wave required a lot of mental and physical strength, and it required a lot of physical strength. This was Evil Psyker, not Whitebeard, and his body was not that strong. When he sensed that something was wrong, he quickly turned around to take a look, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That bastard Great Plains Wolf wanted them to risk their lives for him, while he himself hid 8 jong away. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was preparing to retreat. There was no need to talk nonsense. He quickly noticed the joy on Sia's face and the energy flowing between her palms, so he also ran back without saying anything. Now you want to run? It's too late. Thea's hands glowed with a faint green light. This was a legendary undead spell called Torlotin's Killing Cloud. As she raised her hands, the entire sky and earth were covered by countless acid clouds. Just looking at them would make one's eyes burn. Thea sensed that Barry, Caitlin, and the rest had already left the city, and no longer had any worries. Such a dilapidated star city should not exist in this world. Destroy it. A huge amount of mana was injected into the acid clouds, and the clouds quickly covered the surroundings. Regardless of whether it was the roads, houses, human remains, or abandoned industrial products, everything was engulfed by the acid clouds and dismembered into a puddle of green water. She saw many scenes through the acid cloud with her spiritual power. She saw the dilapidated Quinn's old house and her childhood school, Moira's grave, Oliver's cenotaph, and Thea Quinn's coffin that belonged to this world. She retracted her gaze. This Thea is not me. You want me to lie in a coffin? Let Darkseid do it himself. Everything was covered by the acid clouds. Large amounts of materials, regardless of their structure, purpose, or meaning, were all broken down by her and returned to the natural world. Thea could even feel the green of all things in this world cheering. The wasteland wolf had been hiding in the periphery at first, and now he was running away. His extreme speed was even more amazing. No one knew if he had recovered from his injuries or if he had great potential, but he was surrounded by electric arcs. He didn't even look at his companions as he ran away. Sia controlled the acid clouds to chase after him from several directions, but he managed to escape at the last moment several times. "You can't run away from me." The acid cloud had already shrouded the whole city. Under the effect of magic power, everything in front of him was green. The sky was green, and so was the ground. He was blocked by Sia several times and had to run back. His vision was blurred, and he was not familiar with the road. His sensitive perception had been warning him, but unfortunately, he could not run out. The three friends he had abandoned did not have super speed. In the face of the corrosive acid clouds, the three of them huddled together for warmth. The Frost Killer and Firestorm were desperately using their energy to buy some time for Echo to open a portal. As for where they would be teleported to, they did not care. They just wanted to escape. Evil Psyker was already at the end of his tether after continuously relying on the vibration waves to shatter Sia's protective shield. Vibrations were a double-edged sword. If one's physical fitness was not up to par, they would hurt themselves as well as the enemy. Evil Psyker's mind was a mess, and his vision was a little blurry. However, he knew that if he gave it his all, he could still live. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was trying his best to communicate with the outside world, trying to find a way out. Chapter 664. Thea finally understood why Batman set up the anti-teleportation device. She had already set up an inescapable trap, but the enemy only needed to teleport to escape. This was just too annoying. Since the young mistress was unhappy, it was only natural that others would be even more unhappy. Her green eyes reflected Evil Psyker's figure as she lightly snorted. "He's just a mortal." Her green eyes glowed brightly, and two sharp gazes shot towards Evil Psyker, who was opening a teleportation gate. Thea wanted to eliminate him from the source. The three of them were trying their best to maintain the battle. Previously, Thea's attention was focused on extreme speed, which was why they were barely able to survive until now. How could a legend-ranked undead spell be blocked so easily? "Psyker, hurry up." The white-haired Frost Killer's expression was extremely ugly. Initially, the attack wasn't that powerful, so they could still use some buildings to block it. Now that Thea was serious, buildings? Even steel would be corroded. The three of them didn't think that they could be tougher than steel. Evil Psyker had never felt that opening a teleportation gate was so difficult. He didn't understand that magic interfered greatly with teleportation, especially legend-ranked spells. Ordinary mags wouldn't be able to cast a spell of this level without several hundred people preparing it for 2 months. Fortunately, he was powerful and had trained a lot. Under the layers of interference, he found the coordinates of the outside world with great difficulty. "I found it." Unfortunately, before he could even finish his sentence, he was enveloped by an incomparably terrifying aura. His survival instincts and all sorts of subconscious warned him, but his body was too tired, and his opponent's attack was too fast. The last thing Evil Psyker saw was 2 rays of green light shooting out from the green mist and directly striking him. Then, his vision turned black, and he was eliminated from the source. Sensing the abnormality, the evil Frost Killer and Firestorm were only left with confusion. Everything related to Evil Psyker had been erased from their memories. The two of them no longer remembered that they had such a companion. That was why they were puzzled. What were they doing here? Why didn't they run when facing the deadly poison mist? Instead, they chose to stay here and endure. The two of them were completely confused, but the poison mist wouldn't let them go. The thick and colorful mist directly enveloped the two of them, and when their energy ran out, it would be their time to die. After killing a living person, Thea didn't feel anything. She didn't have a headache like before. She knew that this was the result of the gods relying on their life rating to crush ordinary people. With a wave of her hand, the heavy fog suppressed the evil duo. Her gaze once again focused on extreme speed. Using the same trick, 2 more green lights shot out. Extreme Speed, who was sprinting at full speed, had extremely sharp reflexes. In terms of pure perception, he was more than 10 times sharper than Evil Psyker. He had noticed Thea's gaze the moment it got close. He definitely did not check the almanac before leaving the house today. What kind of strange things were these? 2 rays that could bend. He quickly realized that no matter how he moved to the side to dodge, the 2 rays of light were still chasing after him. Danger, danger, danger. His perception had been desperately transmitting this signal to him, so he could only keep running. Extreme Speed didn't know what this thing was, but because he had run a few laps in the fog, his nerves were a little sluggish. In his opinion, being hit by this ray was no different from being swallowed by the fog. Both were extremely dangerous, so running away was always the right choice. When the Great Plains wolf saw this from afar, all that was left was shock. What a joke! A green ray that can track. He had seen the moment when Psyker was killed. The Great Plains wolf was a new god with a unique trait, so the Eye of Obliteration could not erase his memory. He was very familiar with the fluctuations of this ability, which was why he was so shocked. How similar was this to Darkseid's Omega Ray? Both could erase traces of their existence, and both were extremely fast. The only difference was that Darkseid's ray was red, while this goddess's was green. This. He mumbled to himself for a while. He had been very confident in the battle between Darkseid and the Heavenly Father. After all, Darkseid was stronger than the Heavenly Father. Now, he was starting to lose confidence. If the Goddess of Wealth interfered at a critical moment in the battle between the 2 bosses, Darkseid might not win. After all, he was only slightly stronger than the Heavenly Father, not to the point where he could crush the Heavenly Father. The Great Plains wolf hid far away and pondered about the future. At this moment, Extreme Speed felt that he had no future left. His entire body hurt from running. He was already heavily injured, and now he was running like crazy. Thea controlled the thick fog in front of him to block his path, while the tracking rays chased after him from behind. Countless houses, corpses, and plants had been decomposed into some kind of green substance that covered the ground in layers. Extreme Speed could run on water, so the muddy environment did not affect him much. However, he knew that his escape route and range were rapidly shrinking. He could feel that the rays behind him were lethal. Several times, he tried to find a wall, a person, or something of the same size that he could pass through. Unfortunately, Thea was prepared for this. She had swept the entire street clean. He knew that the Flash had dodged the Omega Ray, but trying to pass through an object to block the rays? Dream on. Extreme Speed racked his brains to think of a way to save himself. He ran on the spot and created an air wall. The poisonous cloud was indeed temporarily blocked, but the rays were still stubbornly pursuing him. This was the power of law, and it had nothing to do with air. Realizing that the tracking rays behind him were the most dangerous, he focused all his attention behind him. He threw lightning bolts behind him, but unfortunately, the rays were locked onto him. They were not afraid of any interference. Extreme Speed's wounds began to worsen. Large amounts of blood flowed out, and half of his body was dyed red. Dragging his heavily injured body and running non-stop for several minutes, his stamina was almost at its limit. If he did not use the poisonous fog or the obliterating rays, he would definitely die in 30 seconds. However, this person's character could be described as resolute. Even in the most dangerous situation, he did not give up and was still trying to find a way out. The entire city was covered by Thea's mental power. She had already foreseen the rapid doomsday. There was no need for careful calculations. The obliterating rays would catch up to the target in 12 seconds and he would disappear completely. Just as she was watching the rapid doomsday for a few seconds, something unexpected happened. A giant hand suddenly appeared on the battlefield. The giant hand directly blocked the tracking rays. Its 5 fingers closed and easily crushed the obliterating rays. Sia didn't even have time to react before she felt an invincible power directly teleporting her. In less than 1,000th of a second, she went from the muddy Star City to the majestic and solemn Snow Mountain. The change in the environment did not attract her attention. She stood at the top of the mountain and looked at the giant in front of her. He was wearing a green robe and a green hood. His face was hazy and she could not see his face. Thea gasped. A ghost. How did this guy appear? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.